My psycho landlord literally makes my life a living nightmare, forcing my family to fix up his broken down house or else he's gonna sue us before we can move out. So me and my former neighbors decide to get some revenge by literally making that property uninhabitable after we move out, costing him nearly $50,000 in potential rent money simply because nobody was able to rent it out. And honestly, I've never felt more satisfaction at getting back at someone in my life because this guy absolutely deserved it. Here's what happened. In 2020, my family moved to a new state for my husband's job. It was in the middle of the pandemic and renting costs were way down across the country, so we didn't think twice when we found a cute little house that fit our needs and was well within our budget range. It was 2 houses down from the school my kids would be attending and across the street from a really nice park. The house had been empty for a while and we assumed it was because of the pandemic, and the landlord, who was also the owner, seemed eager to get it rented. We had a friend walk through the house for us on a video call before we signed the contract, and everything seemed like it would really work out. Well, as soon as we moved in, things started falling apart. The blinds fell off the windows the first time I tried to adjust them, the plumbing under 2 different sinks started leaking within the first week, and the seal on one of the toilets broke during the first month. We called the landlord, who came over and fixed everything on his own, but always asked that my husband help him out. For reference, my husband used to work construction and the landlord wasn't too great with home repairs. Then, during the second month we lived there, the garbage disposal broke. When I informed the landlords, they responded saying that they could come and fix it, but they said they would need to charge me a $70 service fee for repairs as per the contract, and then pointed out that they should have charged me a service fee for each separate repair they had already made, but they were trying to be nice since we just moved in. And honestly, I was confused. In every place we've ever rented, basic home wear and tear was not the tenant's responsibility. That's the entire reason we rent. I read back over the contract and I realized that line, including a service fee for repairs, doesn't specify for repairs due to misuse of tenant, just the repairs in general. I then argued with them that it was their home and they were responsible for basic repairs, but they insisted that I kindly follow the contract. I got in touch with other landlords in the area and they all agreed that my landlords were correct. Because most of the developed housing in this area is between like 50 to 100 years old, landlords know that basic wear and tear will cost them an arm and a leg every time something breaks. So they implement a fee to discourage tenants calling about every little thing that might break. But I wasn't calling because a door came loose off the hinges or a drawer fell off the track. I'm calling because water is pouring from under the toilet or appliances have shorted out, none of which is my fault at all. Regardless, we were stuck paying a service fee for every time the landlord had to come fix something, which ended up being at least twice a month throughout the entire duration of our 2-year lease. Every time I had to call about an issue, they found a way to make it sound like the problem occurred because of our misuse. Because I had argued with them about the terms of the contract and insisted that these damages were not due to misuse, they decided that we must be incompetent and began micromanaging everything. And here's just a few things they did that honestly got under our skin. They came over to supervise my husband as he fertilized and mowed the lawn to make sure that he was doing it correctly. They would also drive by at least once a week just to see that the grass was mowed, the leaves were raked, the snow was shoveled, the flower beds were weeded, etc., and would message us if they felt like we neglected it even a little bit, despite the fact that we did not live in a homeowners association neighborhood. They always ended their message by saying, "If it's too much for you to handle, we can do it for you, but we would have to charge you a weekly fee." And it's like, yeah, that's definitely not going to happen. They would also find supposed hazards to nitpick every time they came into the house. They would say the rug was a tripping hazard. "Oh, you can't put boxes there, that'll block the walkway and it's a hazard." Or they would say, "Oh, you can't secure a trampoline to the ground because it might be a hazard." So to say I hated these people is just a complete understatement. They would also call us on holidays to bother us about menial issues, such as the last time we weeded the garden or fertilized. Then they insisted on receipts and proof and implied that we were lying because they said the entire yard looked unsatisfactory. And just to be clear, my husband dedicated 4 hours every Saturday to the landscaping of this crappy 1/3 acre lot, and it was the nicest looking lawn and yard on the block. Whenever we call about repairs that we weren't comfortable handling ourselves, they would give us instructions like we were children. They would tell us what repair tools to purchase and how to fix it, even if we weren't comfortable with it ourselves. They insisted we try to manage it first before they came and looked at it, even if it was an electrical issue or a plumbing issue that would require us to make changes to the house, which by the way was completely prohibited in our contract. Now at first we played their game, but when the instructions they gave us didn't work, they would always respond by saying, "Well, you probably did it wrong, but I could come look at it for you. I'll have to charge you a service fee though, or you can just call a professional." Another option they gave us was that they could come observe us attempting to fix it and give instructions as we go. But if they had to condescend to physically touch the issue or the repairs at all, well, then they would have to charge us a service fee. Like, my God, I really hated these people. After arguing the first time this happened about how unfair it was to charge me a fee, after I just spent a lot of my own time and money attempting to fix it per their instructions without any kind of success, I just straight up told them to forget it. I would just call a professional. Well, when I said that, they took offense to that, to which they then said they had to approve any professional that we called in to fix the problem. If we wanted a pro to look at it, we had to do the research and send the landlord a proposal about who to use, and only then they would make the final decision. Plus, we would still have to pay a service fee because the repair had to be made regardless if a pro fixed it or if they fixed it themselves. On 3 different occasions, we had a professional come out to give a quote. Mind you, each time it was for a different issue, and every time, the professionals refused to even bother with a quote for the specific issue they were called on because it was always a smaller part of a larger problem that would require extensive remodeling and repairs to do it correctly and ensure that the problem was fully resolved. And these were for structural issues of the home, such as the foundation being poured incorrectly or the wiring being done wrong, causing a fire hazard. Now, due to insurance issues, any professional would be unable to address the immediate problem without making extensive repairs. And every time, the landlord would say he wanted a second opinion and then bring in a handyman friend who looked at it and said that the professionals were trying to scam him and that it was an easy fix and that they could MacGyver a solution without spending thousands of dollars. Each time, their fix would only last a few months, and then the problem would occur again and they would come back and figure out another half-baked solution, for which, by the way, we absolutely had to pay a service fee every time. By the end of our 2-year contract, I was totally done with these people, but unfortunately, renting prices had gone way up and nothing else close by was in our budget range. We asked a few months before our lease was up if they would be willing to renew the lease with us, and they actually told us that they would let us know before 60 days of the end of the lease. Well, at 11:30 p.m. on the last day they could still legally inform us, they sent us the lease renewal agreement, which included a 25% rent increase and a new clause in the contract stating that all damages the landlord deemed to be the tenant's fault were to be solely covered by the tenant. And I'm just thinking to myself, absolutely not. They already acted like everything was our fault. There was no way I was going to give them legal permission to make me pay for everything. Plus, on top of that, they wanted to charge me 25% more to stay in the same broken down house? No, screw that. We are absolutely moving. At first, my husband tried to negotiate the price down because he was shocked they would ask that much increase just to stay in the house. Well, they countered that if they were going to turn around and rent it to someone new, that they would be able to charge 35% more, and that the 25% increase was really giving us a break considering the going rate. So we decided that since we were going to be paying more anyways, we might as well move to a nicer house with nicer landlords. All 3 of my kids were going to be finally in school full time, so I could pick up extra work to pay the difference. We found a place that was a little more expensive than the cost of staying in our old house, but with twice as much space and a really nice neighborhood. And my kids could stay in the same school, so it wouldn't really be too much of an upheaval for our family. I waited until 11:30 p.m. on the last day that I legally had to inform the landlords of our decision to renew, and I sent them an email stating that their house was really not a good fit for our family anymore and that we would not be renewing our contract. And this was 30 days before our lease ended. Well, they retaliated by sending us a list of all the repairs that we had to make sure were completed before we could move out, which included a lot of small things, but also a few big things. They wanted us to spackle all the holes in the walls and repaint pretty much everything. They demanded we remove any modifications we made, such as shelving units, guardrails, and the partition office we set up in the unfinished basement, complete with lighting and flooring and walls. They wanted us to replace the bedroom door that one of our kids broke, which was not a standard size and would need to be cut and sanded to fit the doorway. They also wanted us to leave the yard in the exact condition we found it, while also fixing the flooring in the bathroom that had mold built up underneath it. And my God, this last one in particular really pissed me off, because the flooring by the tub had not been properly sealed, so any amount of water on the floor was going to run under the floor and cause a lot of mold. In fact, the base ceiling that ran around the entire bathroom outline was about 3 inches short of the length it needed in order for it to run flush with the border of the floor. And whoever installed it decided to leave that 3-inch gap at the middle of the tub rather than someplace unnoticeable like in the closet. The landlords insisted that the mold was our fault and that the unfinished seal had nothing to do with it. Then they got angry when I pulled up the flooring to determine the amount of mold damage because it meant the floor needed to be completely replaced. They acted like if I had carefully peeled it back, I could clean the mold and put the exact flooring back down. But this wasn't stick-on squares. This was a roll of linoleum flooring flooring that was over 15 years old, and it had been glued down with professional-grade adhesive. Reusing the same flooring was not an option. It was too brittle and it was breaking apart. He was also mad that I mentioned to one of the professionals who came to give a quote that there had been mold involved at all, and said I was ruining their chances of getting a cheap quote. So, after 3 different quotes for the bathroom floor, they refused to approve anyone because every quote included needing to test for asbestos, which the landlord wasn't confident would end in his favor. So I just told him, okay, look, I'll do the work myself. And for reference, I put in flooring several times before, and I worked construction with my dad growing up, so I know what I'm doing. At this point, we had like 2 weeks left before we needed to be out. In the midst of all this, my husband's uncle passed away in a very traumatic and shocking event, and he ended up flying across the country to attend the funeral and be with his family. So this left me alone with 3 kids to do all the repairs and finish moving into the new house. And in the meantime, the landlords also insisted on approving all the materials I purchased to make the repairs in the home. While all this is happening, our neighbors were pissed at the landlords for pushing us out. We had really good relationships with all of them. One neighbor was like a grandma to my kids and was always baking them goodies and inviting them over to play with their dogs. And the neighbors across the street would always sit on the porch and chat with us on summer evenings. We brought cookies to everyone on our block during holidays and made it a point to get to know everyone's names and know their families. Like it was a really tight community. Even before the landlords and the owners turned nasty though, everybody told us how terrible they were because they had lived in the house themselves and the neighbors all knew them. Before our family moved in, the landlords would only rent to people from their home country who usually didn't speak English and didn't like to interact with anyone else in the neighborhood. On several occasions, the landlord admitted to neighbors that he did not want to rent to anyone who wasn't like his people because it just didn't feel right. We were the first family who had rented that house that felt like an addition to the community rather than someone hiding from the community. When the neighborhood found out that they had bullied us into moving, they were very upset. Now, during the last week, which is the same time that my husband was gone for the funeral, I realized that I was way in over my head. I wasn't going to be able to finish all these repairs and cleaning by myself. We reached out to the landlord and let him know that it would take a few days past our lease to finish up the repairs, but that we were willing to do the work. And when I said that, he lost his mind. He told us that if he didn't get the house back in the exact same condition it was in by midnight on the last day of our lease, then he would charge us an extra month of rent plus sue us for damages because it would be time lost that he couldn't rent it out to someone else. We reiterated that my husband was at a funeral and they had just barely approved the work on the repairs and materials a few days earlier. His response to me was to say, oh, kindly follow the contract or else he would take legal action. So our neighborhood and church congregation came together and spent those last few days working on the house so that everything was fixed and in accordance with what the landlord demanded. One person painted, another person finished the flooring in the bathroom. One family had their kids come over to pull weeds. Another guy brought tools to cut and sand the door to properly fit it. Everyone agreed that all the repairs were the things the landlord should be handling and shouldn't be our responsibility to personally repair or even coordinate the repairs for. These were things that should be covered in a deposit. The landlord acted like he had someone ready to move in the moment we were out, and that he was going to lose the contract if the house wasn't ready. But as a spoiler alert, he didn't. Even after we turned the keys over, the landlord wanted to nitpick and make us come back to fix small things, which we flat out refused and told him that he could take it out of our deposit. Well, 30 days after we moved, we received a bill from the landlord. He nickel and dimed us out of every last cent of our deposit, despite all the repairs and the work the entire community had done. Stupid claims like $150 to replace a window screen that had a hole in it, when I know for a fact he either wasn't going to fix it at all or just buy a $2 repair kit from Walmart. He even charged $800 for water damage to a kitchen drawer because there was some bubbling on the bottom, which is something that I know for a fact he was just going to put an insert on it to cover it up. He even cited damages that had been there since before we moved in, and he himself had charged us a service fee to fix several times, but the issue remained because he never properly fixed anything. His bill was in excess of $500 of our actual deposit. Some of it was to cover utility fees that I had already directly paid to the city. I sent receipts of my payment for the utilities, and I told him I was not paying him any more money. If he wanted to withhold my entire deposit, then so be it, but he wasn't getting another dime out of us. If he wanted to sue us, go for it. Well, after that exchange, we never heard from them ever again. But you know what? I was still pissed. In fact, my neighbors were still pissed, and all of us wanted revenge, even if it's petty. Because the new house we moved into was only like 5 minutes away, my kids still went to the same school, which is the same one that's about 500 feet from the old house. I drive past it every day, taking my kids to and from school, and we also still go over to visit the neighbors. And it's here that our neighbors pretty much caught us up to speed as to what's going on. Apparently, every time the landlords would bring someone in to show the house, the next door grandma would make sure she or her husband were doing yard work. They would make sure to strike up a conversation with the prospective tenants and always mention how the last family who lived there was so wonderful, and it was really awful that the only reason we had to move away was directly because of how the landlords treated us. Now, someone, and I still don't know who, took to knocking on doors and windows at all hours of the night, which sent alarm notifications to the landlords. In fact, they even started to keep his personal car parked in the driveway just as some kind of means to deter break-ins for this unoccupied house. Also, my neighbors who like to sit on the porch and chat with us decided that anytime the landlord was doing landscaping work, this would be the exact time that my neighbor wanted to be enjoying his peace and quiet. So he yelled at the landlord for making too much noise so often that the landlord ended up buying all new landscaping equipment that was electric and specifically intended to reduce noise. Now, as you can probably guess, the house sat empty for 6 months before they got new renters. I watched the price move up and down on Zillow every single month. At first, they tried to rent it out at $800 more than what we had been paying, but then it steadily dropped each month until they were asking nearly what our original rent was. Eventually, they rented it out, and it was much cheaper than what we had tried to negotiate them down to, which gave me great satisfaction. I then found a way to introduce myself to the new family within the first couple of weeks that they lived there. It was easy to spot them during school drop-off and pickup times since they walked with their kids to school. I said to them, "Oh, you just moved in? Yeah, we used to live there. The neighbors are so nice. I hope you don't have too much trouble with the landlords." Well, fast forward, and after a little over a year of the new family living there, I noticed a moving truck in the front yard. I had done the math and I knew that they were still in the middle of their lease. So I decided to be super petty. So I knocked on the door and I reintroduced myself and I verified that they were moving. Then I unloaded everything the landlord did to us during our move-out process and how they screwed us out of thousands of dollars, even after we did all the repairs. I gave them pictures of our move-out process so that if the landlords tried to charge them with certain damages, they could prove that it existed before they moved in. I gave them contact information for everyone who worked on the house before we moved out, just so they could have a timeline of all the damages that I'm certain the landlord would try to pin on them. It was here that they verified that the landlords had been unbearable, and they were the main reason they were moving out. And once again, the landlords had sent a laundry list of repairs that the family was required to fix before moving out. After our conversation, the husband told me that he was going to inform the landlord that he would only do the cleaning and repairs if the landlord returned their entire deposit up front. Otherwise, he wasn't going to do anything beyond removing his possessions from the property. Well, I'm assuming he didn't get the deposit back because a few weeks after they moved, I saw the landlord and his wife in front of the house. They had hired someone to clean up the yard, and they had set up an umbrella and chairs to shade them while they micromanaged the work this poor laborer was doing in the hot sun. Well, this house sat empty for over a year now, and according to our old neighbors, who we are still good friends with, they've only shown the house a couple of times. It's both for sale and for rent, while also being at a much cheaper than going rate. But guess what? Nobody wants it. As I understand it, the neighbors still do what they can to bother them. Someone went back to knocking on the doors and windows just to set off the alarms, because the landlord's got his car parked there 24/7 again. One neighbor also reported him to the city for blowing his leaves across the street into the park rather than bagging them himself. And you know what? I hope he got a hefty fine and lots of back pain every time he had to rake and bag his own leaves. Now it's covered in snow, and because the house is so close to a school, they have to come over and ensure the walkways are salted and shoveled. It sure is a lot of extra work for a house that is empty and not bringing in any income. Every time I drive past to drop my kids off at school, I see that for sale sign up, and I get the sweet satisfaction that they aren't making any money on that house, and that they aren't terrorizing anyone else anymore. And in case anyone is interested, the new house we moved into has the most amazing owner and landlord. They have never bothered us, they fixed anything that's gone wrong with the house without any complaint, and the only time they charged us anything beyond the agreed rent was when the bracket on the garage door broke because my kids left something in the way and they asked us to cover the cost of the new bracket, which by the way costs less than $50. We've lived here for nearly 4 years now, and honestly, we really love it. Okay, as someone who rents and doesn't own a place of their own, this is my nightmare, bro. Seriously, having a landlord like this would be so crazy. First and foremost, I'm pretty sure, and no, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm pretty sure that half the stuff this guy did to you guys is absolutely illegal. I don't know if you've looked into getting some kind of representation to pursue legal charges or anything like that, and it has been several years since this happened, so I understand if you don't. But dude, if I was in your shoes back then, I'd be be like, okay, I need to lawyer up. This guy says he's gonna sue me, and he's like, oh, you better clean up everything that you damaged in my house or else. Like, I don't know about you, but that would really sketch me out and make me very paranoid that something bad's gonna happen. But like all the things he's trying to nickel and dime you over, while also charging these service fees for doing nothing, like bro, I would lose my mind. This is also why, in my opinion, I would never take a house if I'm just getting like a video tour of it. Like I would want to be there in person to take a look at it. And I totally get like the pandemic was happening, so going there and seeing it was just not possible. And also it was like across the country apparently, so logistically it was probably impossible. But like, man, it's just a gamble dealing with someone like this and going into a house where you're like, oh man, everything's breaking. But I think the biggest silver lining here that I love more than anything else about this story is the fact that your neighbors absolutely revolted against this guy. Seriously, I think it is so cool that they banded together not only to help you fix the house up, but they also went out of their way just to ruin any chance of that place getting rented out anytime soon. Like, my God, those are some amazing neighbors. And you must have been a great neighbor yourself because you clearly left a good impression. So the fact that these people would go out of their ways and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna make this guy's life a living nightmare and no one's ever gonna live there for long. Like, that's amazing and honestly like a really cool act of solidarity because dude, you had no reason to move out of that place. It was in a perfect location, you had a good thing going, but it just sucks because you got a bad landlord who clearly is just trying to milk his tenants worth of every money so that eventually his house will get fixed up. That's some really toxic behavior and you definitely did not deserve to deal with that. My entitled sister-in-law and mother-in-law demand that my husband and I reschedule our entire wedding, all because my sister-in-law got pregnant. But now, even after I said no, we are not going to reschedule this wedding, they have now said that our marriage is stupid and that my sister-in-law's pregnancy is way bigger of an event than anything we would do. And at this point, my husband and I are so confused and we seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my fiance and I are set to be married in December. We got engaged in June of 2023 and decided on the wedding date a year and a half in advance for everyone's convenience. We have been dating for about 10 years and have been saving up for the wedding for 5 years. And we did it this way so we could afford an extravagant wedding in a palace in India. And we finally made those arrangements. My husband's sister has always been a golden child. She always got exactly what she wanted, as opposed to my husband, who they treated like a cash cow. Every time his mother needs anything expensive, he's the first call that she makes. I try not to get between them, but she's never shown any interest in his life. Now, coming to the wedding, we sent out our save the dates in December of 2023. That way, people can plan their holidays and their plans way in advance. My sister-in-law got married 3 years back, and it was a nice wedding, but not nearly as fancy as ours. When she knew about the plans, she started finding problems in everything, to a point where my husband asked her to stop interfering. Last week, we got a call from her in all the excitement, where she told us that she's pregnant and she's expecting a child in December. Both of us were shocked, but we were happy for her and we congratulated her. She then said to me, "So now I need you two to get married at City Hall because I'm gonna need help with the baby." And when she said this, I was baffled and I told her the wedding is still on and her having a child does not change our wedding plans. Now, she threw a fit when I said that and ended up hanging up on me. Later that day, his mom called us up and told us to postpone the wedding 6 months so his sister could attend it, and if we didn't, then she wouldn't be attending either, and that her daughter's pregnancy is a bigger event than our stupid marriage. Now, my husband was upset and chose not to respond, but I just lost my mind. I told her that if my sister-in-law prioritized her pregnancy over our marriage, which she knew about for a year and a half, we are not obligated to prioritize her pregnancy over our happiness. When I said that, my husband was absolutely speechless. So would me and my husband be the jerks if we didn't postpone our wedding? Because right now we are very frustrated and we seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't think you would be the jerk at all, because this really has been known about for like over a year and a half. You set up this date, you've been saving up for it, you've seriously got some obvious plans that you want to follow through with. So for your sister to call you up and be like, "Okay, just get married at City Hall," as if this isn't some kind of like big event that you want to try and celebrate, that is like insane behavior and there's no good excuse for that. She has no right to make that kind of demand from you, and it's honestly disgusting that she would even begin to entertain that. It's also really weird to me that the mother-in-law is like, "Oh, you're either going to postpone postpone it by 6 months or I'm not going either. And it's like, okay, then just don't show up. And the original poster goes on to explain in the comment section that they don't blame their sister-in-law for prioritizing their health and their baby, but for them to expect them to reschedule their entire wedding just for them, especially after all the trouble that this sister-in-law has caused them, that just doesn't seem right, and it really does seem insane. And I 100% agree with them. So no, you are not the jerk by denying this demand, and I don't blame you for shutting that down altogether. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled neighbor demands that I take down my fence from my backyard, as she claims that it's invading on her property by only 9 inches. So I decide to maliciously comply, resulting in my neighbor at my front doorstep once again, practically begging me to build a new fence since her aggressive German Shepherd no longer had an enclosed backyard that he could stay at. But after all she had put me through, as well as her saying she was going to take me to court if I didn't take down my fence, I told her I wasn't going to do a single thing. And I've honestly never felt better about getting back at my rude neighbor in my life. Here's what happened. About 5 or 6 years ago, I built a fence in my backyard. I talked with my neighbors and we decided on a good place to build the fence. We knew an approximate property line based on some survey pins, but we were simply too cheap to pay for a surveyor. So we just shook hands and I built the fence. It was a great deal for my neighbors. I paid for literally everything. I built the fence and all they had to do was give me a thumbs up when it was done. Well, a year later, they sold their house. That meant that I got a new neighbor. More specifically, I got someone who we will call Anna. Anna was from the big city. She was a realtor and she had flipped 8 houses in 12 years. Anna loved this new house and planned on staying for a long time. And she also had a dog. Razzie was a German Shepherd mix that spent most of the day outside while Anna went to work. Razzie was aggressive towards children, animals, insects, and any plants that waved in the breeze. Razzie also, as Anna once told me, loved to chew on furniture, and that's why Razzie had to stay outside so much. About 6 months after Anna moved in, I saw a surveyor walking around in my neighborhood, and he was paying special attention to my backyard. The next day, Anna showed up at my front door with a stack of papers and asked me if I was going to pay her for the 9 inches that my fence was encroaching on her property. I explained the handshake deal with the last neighbors, but of course, she was having no part of it. She wanted the fence moved or she wanted money. No discussions. She had even spoken to her lawyer friend and was perfectly happy to take me to court over the fence. She said to me, "I don't know how you guys do it out here in the sticks, but where I come from, we follow the rules." So I got rid of the fence. The next day, I unscrewed the horizontal rails from the brackets, stacked the fence panels up against my garage, and pulled up the fence post with my working van. About a week later, Anna shows up at my front door again, and suddenly she wants to know when I'm going to be building a new fence. It turns out without my portion of the fence, she has not been able to let Razzie out unattended out of fear that he might run away, attack something, or get hit by a car. She also told me that she can't keep him in the house all day while she's at work anymore, since her furniture and her carpet are practically ruined. So I looked at her and I said, "Well, Anna, I'm not going to be rebuilding the fence. I don't want any legal trouble, and the best way to stay out of trouble is to not build near your property." When I said that, the look on her face was priceless. I thought she was going to cry, and she probably did when she got back home. She tried to protest, saying that she really needed the fence back, and she would even help pay for the new one. She told me how much she loved the style and aesthetic of the old one, and that it was just the location that she had a problem with. But you know what? I stood firm. There would be no new fence on my side of things. Fast forward, and she still never even got a fence. She made half-hearted attempts to put up some bamboo fencing, but Razzie tore through that stuff like wet newspaper. Eventually, I sold my place and I moved away. I took the old fence panels with me, and I still look at them every day when I let my dog out in the morning. And I'm honestly so glad that I got back at my rude neighbor in the way that I did. Yeah, that neighbor absolutely had all of that coming. First of all, who in their right mind's gonna act like that towards a fence? This lady greatly benefited from having that fence in the first place, and then she's gonna turn around and be like, "Oh, but I don't like it. That's not okay on my property." She was ready to go to court over those 9 inches of the fence being on her property. That is such a petty thing to do, and it's honestly so uncalled for. But it's honestly so satisfying to see her life pretty much fall apart right then and there, because she realized she screwed up big time. If she had just kept her mouth shut, there would still be a fence up to keep her aggressive dog in her property line. And now I bet that dog has completely ruined everything inside of her house. The furniture, the carpet, probably anything you can think of, that dog has probably chewed through. So good for the original poster for standing up for themselves and refusing to have any kind of like condescending discussion. Like she seriously tried to be like, "Okay, when's the new fence coming in, while also offering literally nothing to get it built. Like, why would the original poster pay for a new fence that they literally just had up on their property? So I know if I was in the original poster shoes, I would be very frustrated, but thankfully they got revenge and ended up getting the last laugh. Am I the jerk for telling my son that I have no plans to motivate or support him after he is an adult? Because right now his mom is incredibly upset, and at this point I'm not really sure what to do. Here's what happened. So my oldest kid is a good kid but kind of lazy. His mom has always protected him, and she has her reasons. Her first husband and child passed away about 22 years ago. 2 years after that, we met, we fell in love, we got married, and we had a kid. Unfortunately for me, our son's birth was a catalyst for regression for her. He could do no wrong. If I tried to punish or even just correct him, she would just get upset and start crying or even fight with me. If he found something difficult and I wanted him to work through it or just try harder, she would step in and tell me to back off or actually just do it for him. Well, this led to our divorce, and I wanted to be a father and not a spectator. She fought so I wouldn't get custody, and I ended up with visitation. My kid wouldn't do anything though. He wouldn't bring his homework over, and all he wanted to do was play video games. If I didn't let him, then he would have tantrums, and it was exhausting. And she would always back him up. It was just always my fault. Fast forward, and I remarried to my wife, who we will call Diane. We have 2 children, and we are doing our best to raise them right. My son stopped coming over when he was 14, and even though I still invite him, he rarely responds. My child support just stopped, and his mom has been giving it to him to do whatever he wanted for the last 3 years, which honestly is not my problem. Well, he called me to see if I could help him with money. I asked him what for, and he said that his mom can't give him the allowance that he's used to getting. I asked him if he's going to be attending some sort of like post-secondary school, and he said no. So I just told him to get a job. Well, when I said that, his mom absolutely lost her mind. She said that she will take me back to court so her poor baby can live his life his way. I wish for the odds to be ever in her favor, and then I just hung up. Now that he's an adult, I never have to talk to her ever again. It's too bad because I loved her very much, but not anymore. My son asked me to help him find a job, and I said that I would. I told him to send me his resume, and I've been waiting about 3 weeks for it. He called me yesterday to see if I had any progress on finding him a job, and I said that he never sent me his resume. Well, he then got upset that I didn't remind him. I told him that I was not going to motivate him to do anything, that I would be here if he needed help, but that it would never be for money ever again. Now, I let him come over and I helped him with his resume, and I also talked to him about going into a trade or even a community college. He is beginning to understand how absolutely messed up his future is now, especially since his mom cannot do everything for him. He's now upset with his mother because he doesn't have any life skills, but she's mad at me for showing him the truth. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk at all, because you are giving your son the best education he could ever get. Like, this guy's got to realize sooner than later that anything he wants to do in his life is literally on his shoulders. No one's going to be there during the hard times to be like, oh, you got to get up and get things done. That is literally just going to fall on him and him alone. And you know what? It really sucks that his mom didn't do a better job of teaching her son this, because seriously, she set him up for failure. So no, I don't think you're the jerk, and I think you did the best thing for him at this stage of his life. My crazy friend insists that I'm a different height than what I really am, and it's honestly driving me crazy, as she refuses any evidence that I tried to give her, despite the fact that I've measured myself multiple times, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I feel insane having to make this post, but this has been bothering me for several years now. I'm a 26-year-old female, and I have a close friend who insists that I'm 5'6", but the thing is, I'm not. I'm 5'3", maybe a tiny bit over on a good day, but I'm definitely not 5'6". Like, I would tell her no, I'm not 5'6", and she would just argue with me about my own height. It got so bad that when I went to the doctor for regular checkups, I had a nurse measure me, you know, a 20-something-year-old woman, which they normally don't do for obvious reasons, and she confirmed to me that I'm 5'3", which of course I already knew, and I relayed this information to my friend, but she still didn't believe me, or even thought that the nurse measured me wrong. I had my dad, who is tall and able to see over my head to get an accurate reading, literally measure me himself just because I felt like I was going insane, and he also got that I'm 5'3", to which my friend said, measuring tapes are known to be off, which, like, sure, I'm not saying they can't be, but I'm consistently getting the same result over and over again, and this is with multiple measuring implements. Now, I don't know if it's because she says she's 5'6", and she insists that we're the same height or something like that, which, like, yeah, we are around the same height, but we've never stood side by side and checked down to the inch or anything like that. There could easily be a few inches between us, but I don't want to argue about how tall she is when that's exactly what she does to me. At the the end of the day, she can say her own height is whatever she wants it to be. I just want her to leave me alone about my height. Now, this comes up way more often than I would like it to, and I've handled it by just brushing over the topic, but it really bothers me, and I don't want it to bother me for the rest of my life. At the same time, this is pretty clearly a battle that I'm not going to win with her, and therefore, I don't want to keep arguing about it. Honestly, aside from this one thing, she really is a great person, and she is a great friend, but this is driving me up a wall. How do I get her to stop gaslighting me over my own height? What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, I think you might be onto something. I think she's saying that you're 5'6" because she wants to believe that she's 5'6", and if you guys are similar in height, then she's trying to believe, oh yeah, that means I'm 5'6" as well. And anytime you're like, no, I'm 5'3", I literally proved it. It only shakes up her worldview because you're the same height as her, and that means that everything she's like told people or said about herself is just completely wrong. So literally, this has nothing to do with you, and I'm pretty sure this has everything to do with her. So honestly, the next time you see her and she wants to be like, no, you're 5'6", you should pull out like 5 different tape measures and be like, okay, let's prove it. Like that literally might be the only way she proves it to herself that not only are you not 5'6", but also she's definitely not 5'6" either. Because that's honestly what I think's going on here, and it really sucks that you're caught in the crossfire. Am I the jerk for telling my sister-in-law that she should be ashamed of herself and learn to be a mature adult after she mouths off against my niece and nephew? Here's what happened. So my brother had 2 kids with his ex by the time he was 21 years old. He stuck around for a couple of years, but when they broke up, he left the kids as well. He paid no child support, made no effort to keep in touch with the kids, did not check if they were okay. He literally did nothing. The rest of the family let the relationship drop too, but I was the exception. I stayed part of my niece and nephew's lives. I still have a good relationship with them today, and they're really close to my kids. 5 years ago, my brother got married, and now he's expecting baby number 3 with his wife. After settling into family life, he started to think more about his oldest 2, and he made the decision to reach out to them. He was met with silence initially, and then after speaking to his ex, he got a brief message from his kids that they were still mad and hurt that he left. They had contact for about a month, and it was very sporadic. He asked if they could meet in person, and the kids said no, but they said they would do a video call with him one time, and that was it. This call happened 2.5 months into their reconciliation. At some point during this, he mentioned wanting them to meet his wife and other kids. They told him that was not going to happen, and that they didn't want to reconcile with him. My brother was surprised, and had thought that maybe them opening up about being angry and hurt was a sign that they were willing to work through that. They told him that it would be one thing if he didn't settle down and started a family all over again, but the fact that he did that and then reached out to them was just too much for them, and they want nothing to do with the family that he created now. This then led to a back and forth where he said they have younger siblings, and they told him very clearly that they will never acknowledge or accept them as siblings, and they will never accept him as their dad, and that he needs to move on. I spoke to my niece and nephew after the call as they reached out to me, and they said it was good to close that door and to have the decision be their own. They felt like they finally got some closure. Well, my brother wasn't prepared for the outcome, and his wife is furious that my niece and nephew rejected them for existing. She started bad-mouthing the kids at my parents' house in front of all of us. My brother told her to stop, but she told him that they should be ashamed of themselves for reacting like spoiled brats who didn't get their way, and punishing innocent children when they're supposed to be grown adults now. I finally spoke up, and I told my sister-in-law that she should be ashamed of herself for talking like that about the kids my brother abandoned, because he didn't give a second thought to them until he had settled down with her and their kids. I told her that she should learn to be a mature adult and accept that his actions had consequences and that this is one of them. Well, when I said that, she then became offended and started saying I have no right to speak to her that way. And now some of my family are telling me that I should have said nothing. So honestly, am I the jerk in this scenario? Because right now I'm still very frustrated. No, you are not the jerk, and in my opinion, it was your right and responsibility to step up. Your sister-in-law is a complete moron. She does not understand what those kids went through, and she clearly doesn't understand her deadbeat husband. And that's exactly what the brother is in this situation. He gave up on his kids and walked out on their lives, and then came back with a new family and said, hey, let's be a family again. Like, what are you talking about? That is so disgusting. Like, just imagine how the niece and nephew feel in this scenario, where they see their dad with a new wife and a new family, with him trying to be like, oh yeah, we could be a family again. Like, was he really expecting some kind of like blanket forgiveness for all the crap that he put them through? Like, that is not just gonna happen from one video call. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not the case. So for your sister-in-law to be mouthing off like this, when she very clearly has no idea what she's talking about, in my opinion, is something that absolutely needed to be shut down. Because the original poster was there for those kids when no one else was. And if anybody is the most qualified to talk about what these kids have gone through, it is absolutely the original poster. Am I the jerk for leaving my sister's wedding reception, where I was supposed to be taking pictures, after my stepsister made it blatantly clear that she did not want me there? Because right now, she and my mom are very upset, and at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things off, I'm a professional photographer, mostly industrial photography for businesses and such, and I do other types for myself and as art. I love taking pictures of the old architecture in my city and of the surprising wildlife in it. My mom asked me if I would be willing to take pictures for my stepsister's wedding to help them save some money. She asked me to do it as a gift. She knows that my stepsister, who we will call Tina, absolutely hates me, and I pretty much reciprocated. But I decided to be the bigger person, and I agreed. I was there for the makeup and the wedding party and getting dressed, and I took a ton of pictures at the wedding. I prepared a checklist of all the different formals that she wanted and made sure that I got them all. I mean, I did my absolute best. When I got to the reception, there was no place for me to sit. I had gotten there right away, so I could get pictures of the wedding party arriving and all of that. And the wedding party had stopped to use the bathroom and get freshened up. I called my mom to find out where I was meant to sit and to eat and do pretty much anything else, and she talked to Tina and called me back. And it was then that I could tell that she was upset. She said that Tina thought that since I was working and not a guest, she didn't have a seat or any food for me. After I heard that, I thanked my mom for the information, and then I just left. I took my boyfriend, who was my assistant that day, and we went out for dinner for my treat. I mean, we had been on the go for 8 hours by that point. I turned off my phone and we had a nice night out, and we saw the new Mad Max movie. Sunday morning, I turned on my phone and it was full of messages asking me where I went, then demanding that I come take pictures, and then her cursing me out. I called my mom to see what was up, and she said that Tina was very upset that I left and that all her reception pictures are going to be from cell phone cameras. She said I should have just gone to get a quick bite to eat at McDonald's and then came back. Now, I told her that I felt terrible and I would give her a full refund, but I also said that this was the last straw and that I do not want to hear anything when I do not invite Tina to my wedding next year. Now, Tina obviously thinks that I'm a jerk, and my mom thinks that I should have kept the peace. And at this point, I'm just gonna drop off the thumb drive with all the pictures, and I'm just gonna wash my hands of this altogether. No editing, no nothing. So am I the jerk for leaving early? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. Your stepsister decided to treat you like garbage, and as a result, she won the stupid prize of getting exactly what she deserved. Like seriously, it would not have been that much to find one spot for you to sit and eat, or at least enjoy the reception altogether. So for her to pretend that you're not even a guest is so disturbing to me. And in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be just as upset and probably would have left in the same way that you did. An entitled Karen in Walmart demands that I get off the mobility scooter that I was currently using, claiming that I didn't need it and that I was just faking it so I could ride in the cart. But even though I explained that I had gallbladder surgery and that I desperately needed this cart to get around, she refused to let me sit down. And I'm honestly still blown away by the way this lady acted, and I hope I never have to deal with her ever again. Here's what happened. So I want to start off by saying that this happened over a year ago, but I still think about it all the time. So at the time, I was 18 years old, and I had just had surgery to remove my gallbladder. As a side note, the surgery was after 6 months of trying to get into the ER, while also in extreme pain and having to wait over 15 hours each time without seeing a single doctor. Since I was fresh off the operating table, I couldn't walk on my own and needed to use a cane. While I was in a store that had them, I used the mobility scooters. You know, because that's why they have them there in the first place. Me and my husband, we'll call him Henry for the sake of the story, were at Walmart one day and I couldn't keep walking with the cane. It was hurting too much, so I told Henry that I needed to grab a scooter. We make our way through the store with little to no problem, but I noticed this entitled Karen had been following us for quite a while. At one point, I stood up to look at some chips that we were thinking about grabbing when this lady comes screaming around the corner and starts berating me. The entitled Karen looks at me and says, "You're disgusting for taking away a disabled cart. You are not disabled." I look at this Karen and I say, "Ma'am, if you look in the basket, you can see that I have a cane with me. So yes, I am currently disabled and I need the scooter." The Karen then looks at me and says, "Oh please, that's not a real cane. That is a stick." Now the cane was my grandmother's, and she made it from a tree that she loved when it had fallen on a tornado. She used it till the day that she died and passed it on to me. I looked at this entitled Karen and I said, "This is in fact a cane, not just something you would buy from the store. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to find my husband to give him the chips that I want." At this point, I tried to get back on the scooter, but she literally blocked my way. I looked at her and I said, "Ma'am, I need to sit back down. down. I'm in a lot of pain and I can't stand on my own for very long. This Karen, while still blocking my way, said, "You're fine. You're young and healthy and you don't need a scooter. You're just too lazy to walk." I then say to her, "No, I just had surgery and I can show you the scars if you want me to, but I need to sit down and get to my husband." Eventually, my husband finds me and tells the Karen to move so I can sit down, explaining that I had in fact just had surgery and that I was in excruciating pain. She finally moved out of the way and was a little white in the face, but left us alone after that. But even to this day, I still can't believe that this entitled Karen treated me in the way that she did. Wow, talk about intrusive. This lady not only said, "Oh, you're faking it, you can walk on your own," but she actually tried to block you from getting back on the scooter itself, all because you stood up for like, what, 5 seconds? Here's the thing, if someone's in a mobility scooter, regardless of their age or what they look like, I'm willing to bet that they probably need it, and it's also none of my business either way. And there's a big difference between like a bunch of teenagers going for a joyride and someone who's just literally privately shopping for stuff that they need, because the way that entitled Karen acted was so out of line, and she had no business trying to stop you in the way that she did. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I overreacting by not inviting my brother to my wedding after he confessed that even 10 years later, he doesn't care that he bullied me all through high school and he still doesn't care about me? Because right now, my mom's upset that my brother won't be going, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so as the title basically says, I'm not inviting my younger brother to my wedding because we have a broken relationship, and he has said and done a lot of terrible things to me. In fact, he was my bully in high school. Now, growing up, we were actually very close. We played together a lot. I tried to take care of him when both our parents were away at work during the summer. I would make him lunch as well as several other things to show my affection. He was bullied pretty badly in middle school, and I honestly think that might be what changed him. By high school, he started to have an attitude with me. He was really rude and disrespectful to me, but I brushed it off as just being a phase. That is, until one day a girl at our church approached me. She started laughing at me and told me that my brother had been telling her how stupid I was. This was also the girl he was trying to date, and she was way out of his league, and he was just trying to score points with her by trashing me. I later learned that he had been using me as the butt of his jokes at school and at our church youth group. He was trying to fit in with the cool kids at school and at church, and he was saying horrible derogatory things about me behind my back. Well, I was furious, so I confronted him. At first, he denied it, but under pressure admitted that it was true, and told me he wasn't sorry and he didn't care. I couldn't believe that my own brother had no remorse, had no feelings about any of this, and literally just didn't care about me at all. He then said and did a lot of horrible things after that for about a year. We were both in cross country, and my parents forced me to give him a ride home every single day. One day, the cross country team had a meeting with the coach after practice, and my brother failed to go to the meeting. And I'm pretty sure he either forgot or he just wasn't paying attention. He later found me in the school hallway after the meeting, and he screamed at me for not reminding him about the meeting. And this was all in earshot of other people, even though it was his job to know about it in the first place. My parents, especially my mom, took no actions to punish him in any way. My mom wouldn't even reprimand him or even say anything negative to him. All she would say is, "I love you both." My mom was so scared of losing her son, she chose to just appease to him and never say anything that would ever upset him. So I felt betrayed by my parents too, especially my mom. 10 years have passed and he has still never apologized. I confronted him a few years ago, not for any kind of apology, but I just wanted an explanation. At first, he denied everything and said he didn't remember what happened and said we had a mutual fight. When I pressured him on it, he sort of just admitted what he did, but he told me that he wasn't sorry and he didn't care about me at all, and that I was just a person from his past. He said I was overreacting still, and he says it was stupid that I was angry about things that happened years ago. Nowadays, he doesn't have a good relationship with anyone in our family. He is a mama's boy, and I think his relationship with my mom is very manipulative. He doesn't really express any kindness or love for anyone in the family, except he sort of likes our mom because she still coddles him. Well, I'm now getting married, and I've decided that I'm not going to invite him to my wedding. When my mom found out I wasn't going to invite my brother, she was extremely heartbroken and very upset. She also thinks that I'm overreacting to what he did, and she thinks I should just get over it. I don't want to hurt my mom, but it's not my fault that we have a broken relationship. My brother doesn't even care about me, and he never apologized. I mean, why would I invite him? It still hurts my mom that he isn't invited, and I don't want to hurt her, but there is no way I want to see him at my wedding. wedding. So am I the one that's overreacting? What should I do? I do not think you're overreacting at all, because I know if I was in your shoes, there's no way he would ever be at my wedding. This guy was your high school bully, your own sibling going out of his way to make your life miserable. I seriously can't imagine what that would be like, because my siblings were the ones I would go to when I was getting bullied. So for that to happen at school and at home from someone you thought was on your side, that must have been devastating, and I'm so sorry you went through that. Now here's the thing, if he had just had a different tune or like grew up in any kind of way in those past 10 years, then I think there would be some kind of difference in how you decided to go about doing this. Like if I had a sibling who treated me like that, and we had some kind of discussion 10 years later to figure things out, or even get like somewhat of an apology from him in some kind of way, then I'm sure he would have been welcomed into that wedding, no problem. But the fact that even 10 years later, he is still saying that you're the one that overreacted, and that he doesn't care about you, and that he's not sorry, like that is tragic and a complete deal breaker. Like this guy doesn't care about you at all. So in my opinion, I think you did the right thing by cutting him out of your wedding, because this guy sounds super toxic. And if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. I cut my toxic father out of my life and went completely no contact with him after dealing with his awful behavior. And now, after my sister invited me to a family event that he would be at, I am now completely unsure of what to do next, or if I should even show up in the first place. Here's what happened. Okay, I'm hoping for some advice on how to handle a pretty delicate situation in my family. It's about me, a 34-year-old male, my sister who's 36 years old, and my father who's 65. My parents divorced when I was a kid, so my mother is not directly involved in any of this. To start things out, my father and I haven't had any contact for 6 years whatsoever. To put it briefly, we've always had a very tumultuous and downright antagonistic relationship, and after many years of pain, sorrow, and disappointment, I finally gave up on having a relationship with him at all. One night, in a bit of fury, I told him how I felt about him in no uncertain terms. I told him that I see him as an awful person, that he is a vile, moronic narcissist, and that he means less than nothing to me. And I meant every single word, and I still do. And shortly thereafter, I sent him a massive text message that made it very clear exactly how he has harmed me and how it has affected my life. I then immediately blocked his number as my mind was made up and I just wanted him gone, but this time for good. And I couldn't care less about his response or any further communication, so there's no reconciliation possible, and I'm fine as anyone could be with that. That's not my goal, and I have no remorse or guilt about how it ended, and I've never for a second doubted that it was the right choice for me. When I broke off contact, the hardest part was that I realized that this would make it incredibly difficult to sustain my relationships with members of my extended family on my father's side. Although it pained me greatly, I made that sacrifice willingly, thinking that that would be the end of it. At that point, it was about self-preservation, and I was absolutely ruthless in guaranteeing myself freedom from his influence. Whatever it took, I was willing to do it. But of course, it wasn't going to end just like that, as these things so rarely do. In my case, primarily because of my sister. My sister has historically been chiefly on my side in all of this, because she witnessed all the awful treatment that I suffered directly, and she was unable to prevent it despite numerous attempts at diplomacy. She carries a lot of guilt because of this, but at the same time, her and my father were always quite close. My father's awful tendencies also targeted my sister, but in a very different manner, and she is much more of a people-pleaser kind of person than I ever was. Where I was routinely shamed, blamed, and ridiculed, my father made her into a mother figure and a confidant, meaning that she's been his personal therapist ever since her teenage years. She resents him for this, but her feelings are far more murky and ambivalent than mine, and despite her complaining about him and his behavior constantly, even to this day, she hasn't broken off contact with him because she wants her children to have a relationship with their grandfather. Now, to me, that's her choice, and I've never criticized her for that, regardless of how I feel his influence might come to harm my nieces and nephew. My father and I have successfully avoided each other for 6 years, and I think we're both quite terrified of the day that we meet. But as long as we navigate around each other, then honestly, that's not a problem. But unfortunately, a situation did arise. Recently, my sister gave birth to her third child, and the christening is set for August. Where I'm from, it's a big occasion where all family members, both inner and extended, are all invited, along with friends and their significant others and children. And of course, my sister doesn't know what to do about me and our father because we haven't seen or talked to each other in 6 years. She knows exactly how I feel about him and that I don't want to be anywhere near him or ever see him or hear him talk ever again, because in that I have found peace. But my father's unwilling to accept that he will not be invited to the christening, all because I don't want him there. And he's also deeply upset about my sister originally not inviting him. So he's been emotionally pressuring her and blackmailing my sister into inviting him. My sister has said to him that I'm the one who gets to be there if me and my father cannot agree that it is alright for the both of us to be there. She's told him that she thinks that he is supposed to be the mature one and that it is his responsibility to reach out and make amends with me, and that's if he wants to be there for his granddaughter's christening. So he said to her that he would reach out to me, and my sister then texted me to tell me that my father might contact me because they had a conversation. Now, at first, I didn't think he would contact me at all because he generally doesn't follow through on any promises that he makes, and he's a massive coward when it comes to dealing with me, or any conflict for that matter. But to my surprise, I received a text message from him that says the following: "I'm reaching out because your sister has expressed that she wants the three of us, namely him, myself, and his wife, at the christening at the same time, and I was hoping that we could agree to being in the same room for this and future events. We don't have to shake hands or even talk. We just need to behave like adults. Kind regards." Now, never mind that my sister has not expressed that she wants him and his wife at the christening, or how aggressive the tone of this message is. With all that in mind, it has provoked way more emotions in me than I thought possible. I thought I was over it, but there is a lot of anger, and to a lesser degree, also sorrow and anxiety. Emotionally, I regret unblocking his number for this message deeply, since it has left me in quite the state of emotional turmoil. But I also don't know what to do about the situation with the christening at hand. I've narrowed it down to 3 options that I can really think of. Option number 1 is that I can tell my sister what reading his message did to me, and that I'm clearly not able to cope with being anywhere near him, seeing as I can't even read a message from him without imploding emotionally. If I did that, that would mean that she would have to choose between the two of us, and I don't want to put her in that position or risk antagonizing her and ruining our relationship. If I go down this path, I'm honestly afraid she'll consider me incredibly cowardly or suspect me of agitating the conflict on purpose, and then decide that I'm the one who won't get invited to the christening. My second option is that I could defy every emotion and instinct that I have, try to man up, and tell my father that we can both go as long as he keeps his distance and avoids talking to me or about me. And I absolutely mean it when I say that I have no way of predicting exactly how I will react if he tries anything. So it could get very, very ugly, as it has many times before. I won't know until it happens, but I am definitely at risk of losing my temper and making a scene. Also, I find the idea of being at the christening with that many people around almost like I'm being publicly humiliated, because they all know what's going on with him and me, and I feel like I'll be spending the entire day avoiding my father and his wife. And if that happens, what's even the point of being there if I have to be hyper-vigilant and anxious? I broke off contact with him exactly because I could no longer ignore my feelings or downplay myself just in order to keep the peace. And on that promise to myself, I will not under any circumstance and on my life go back. So there's a real risk that it might end extremely badly. My third option is to tell my sister that I'm simply not emotionally ready for this, as every inch of my body is communicating this to me. But I have only thought about it for 1 day, so this might change. And then I'll suggest that I pass this time, and then me and my father can sort of take turns at participating in her events so that we don't have to see each other, and so that she doesn't have to feel like she's caught in between, or that she has to intervene or mediate between us, which, as she explained it, is actually the biggest issue for her. Now, I'm not a big fan of this because I have to give up territory to him, and there's another warrior-like part of me who is telling me absolutely not. You will give nothing to this demon of a man, and if he tries anything, you will fight back. But if that day ever comes around, I don't know if I'm strong enough to assert myself sufficiently to make him uncomfortable enough to avoid any future events. Keep in mind also that I'm dealing with a man who many suspect of being a sociopath. So yeah, that's probably not a battle any wise person would willingly take. Now, I don't have to decide for a while, but my mind is going in circles, and I'm caught somewhere in between self-pity and this wild fury of being unable to make sense of what's happening in my head and in my heart. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. This really is a tough situation because you made a stand and you said, look, you are out of my life. And I completely believe you when you say that's a really hard thing to do, because just like you described, you're now having to sacrifice relationships with your extended family while also pretty much putting your sister in the middle of all of this. And that's not fair for you, but also it's not your fault. It sounds like your dad's a piece of garbage and you were wise to step away and say, no, enough is enough. So honestly, I know if I was in your shoes, I would definitely take more time to consider my options, because obviously this literally just happened. So the emotions are all incredibly fresh, and I can only imagine how overwhelmed you probably feel. But hopefully with some time and some consideration, you can figure out exactly what's best for you and your situation, because what your dad put you through is absolutely unacceptable, and you did not deserve it in the slightest. My ignorant father feels that he's entitled to trespass on my neighbor's land despite the fact that he yelled at my neighbor for trespassing on his. And I'm honestly so annoyed, and I seriously hope I never have to deal with this situation ever again. Here's what happened. Okay, so this is something that went down between my entitled father, who lives a handful of miles away from me, and the neighbor who lives across the road from me, and I was mostly an annoyed viewer of the entire situation. So the road my father lives on has this middle section that is extremely poorly maintained for as long as he's lived there, and about a year and a half ago, he convinced the township to shut down and gate off that section, with the lower half of the road where most people live remaining as it was. The upper part where only my father lives, he was told would cease to be a public road, and since he owned all the land along it on both sides, it would effectively become his private property. So essentially, it would turn into an extended driveway for him. They told him that once it was official, they would come and put a sign at the beginning of it showing that it was no longer a public road, and that's exactly what they did. However, before the sign went up, my neighbor who had just moved in was driving around getting a feel for the area and turned down my father's future driveway extension. When my father saw him, he flipped out and started screaming at him, saying that he was trespassing on private property and that he was going to call the police and press charges, and how he would get his weapon if he didn't leave. Now, the whole time, my neighbor was trying to get out an apology, and when he realized he wasn't getting a word in edgewise, he just simply left. The sign eventually went up a few days later, and the neighbor never went back there ever again. Fast forward a few months, and my father has walked to my place and decides that for the walk back, he's going to cut through this same neighbor's property as it can act as a shortcut. The previous owner used to let him do this, so he thinks this is totally fine, even though a different person who has never given him permission owns it now. Well, my neighbor happens to come home while he's doing so, and he sees him on the property. Now, this neighbor has remained polite and friendly with my father in the time since the first incident. Whenever he sees him around my place, he calls out a friendly hello to my father, who proceeds to start running away as if he did something like really suspicious. My neighbor then hops on his ATV and tries to go find him, but my father hides in the tall weeds to avoid him. When he can't find my father, he calls the police, who question him, but since he won't admit to it and they can't prove it was him, nothing ever comes of it. Now, last week my father is over again, and I offhandedly mentioned needing to set up traps in my lawn and talk to this same neighbor. There's a mother groundhog on my neighbor's property, and its kids are trying to come over onto mine to dig. So I'm hoping to trap them and have my neighbor trap the mother so we can humanely relocate them, which is all just fairly normal stuff for this area. Well, my father, without saying a word to me or the neighbor, went over onto his property so that he could beat the groundhogs with a golf club. But it was too little for him to realize that my neighbor put up cameras after the last trespassing incident, and they have clear pictures of him this time. Well, my neighbor called the police, but being the epitome of grace, tells them that he won't press charges this time if my father doesn't lie about anything that he did. The police go talk to my father, and he actually lucks his way out of trouble by actually being honest, because he still feels completely justified in what he did. Regardless, the police inform him that the neighbor doesn't want him on his property ever again, as next time he definitely will be pressing charges. So today my father has another rant for me about how my neighbor is such a jerk for making such a big deal out of this, that he should be allowed to walk through there because the previous owner let him, and there was no reason to act like this towards him because he didn't do anything wrong. And my neighbor is a hypocrite because he trespassed on his property as well. And I honestly hope I never deal with this ever again. Yeah, your dad's a massive hypocrite. So he not only screams at your neighbor for stepping foot on his property, but then he has the audacity to turn around and be like, oh, but I can walk on his property. That is absolutely ridiculous, and his entire demeanor is completely out of line. So hopefully you don't have to deal with that again, because I know if I was in your shoes, I would be horribly embarrassed. My entitled father-in-law pressures my husband into getting a job interview, but it all completely backfires, with my father-in-law not only making a fool of himself, but also going out of his way to literally try and take the CFO's job right in front of his face, claiming that he's way more qualified than this idiot. And I'm honestly still blown away by his behavior, because this seriously has not settled well with me or my husband. Here's what happened. So my father-in-law is what you would call a typical old entitled jerk, and after 38 years of working at the same business, he has now been laid off. He just turned 59, and he has never worked for another company or looked for a job since he was a teenager. He pretty much got hired straight out of college. Despite it all, my father-in-law was convinced that he'd get a new job within weeks. My father-in-law is a delusional and headstrong man, and it's been about 2 months, and he hasn't even had a call back. Right now, he is spiraling. He discovered the nightmare that is LinkedIn, and is now posting insane things on LinkedIn. LinkedIn. And he doesn't even understand that it isn't like Facebook. My father-in-law then basically bullied my husband into arranging him for an interview for a job at his friend's company since they posted an opening on LinkedIn. The job aligned with his skills and it had a decent wage. And sure, it won't pay like his old job, but it's an easy job with fair wages, great hours, and fantastic benefits. And my husband even did a couple of mock interviews with him. Now, a normal, sane person would be grateful and put their best foot forward for the interview, but not my father-in-law. He was rude to the receptionist because she didn't immediately offer him refreshments. He huffed and puffed because he was so upset that he had to wait. He was angry when he was told that he would get interviewed by the operations director and the finance manager instead of the CFO. He was rude, obnoxious, and bullish throughout the entire interview. My father-in-law then spent half the interview talking garbage about the CFO for not being a man of his word, because apparently he was supposed to be interviewed by the CFO, but at the last minute he no longer could. And then the other half of the interview, he spent that time trying to take the CFO's job as he was better qualified. In the last 15 to 20 minutes of the interview, the CFO and the CEO stepped in to say hello, and his rude self continued to talk garbage to the CFO right in his face. Straight after the interview, my husband got a call from his friend, and his friend was livid. My husband apologized profusely, and his friend was gracious enough to accept the apology. My husband and I both asked our father-in-law how the interview went, and he said he had a man-to-man moment with the CEO, and that the ignorant CFO friend of my husband will soon be out of a job. The man is so far into his delusional mindset that he simply couldn't believe it when my husband told him he's never getting a job there. My husband spent pretty much half the day yesterday cussing him out on the phone, and then after work, he drove down to his father's and then spent another hour just calling him out on all of his garbage. And I'm still absolutely blown away by the way my father-in-law acted. Yeah, that guy's a complete moron. Like seriously, who would go into an interview like that and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take the CFO's position right here and now? Like this guy came into the interview process completely wrong. First of all, this guy was completely delusional from the beginning. Not to mention the fact that he basically bullied the original poster's husband into getting this interview in the first place. But then when he finally shows up to the interview, he not only bullies the receptionist, but also tries to take the CFO's job. Like this guy is out of his mind if he thinks this is okay. There is literally no reason for this kind of behavior. Like what a terrible first impression. It's almost like he decided halfway through this interview that he didn't want the job that he was going for, but instead he was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take the CFO's job. I'm way more qualified than this idiot, only to then express that opinion in front of the CFO and the CEO. Like you can tell this guy never had any other job besides the one he got laid off from. So hopefully you guys don't have to deal with this guy anytime soon, because your father-in-law sounds like an absolute nut job. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for siding with my friend about her husband's unfair inheritance choices? Because right now he is very upset with me, and right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my friend is married to a much older guy, and they have 2 kids that are elementary school age. This is her first marriage and his second, and he has 2 kids from his first marriage. My friend, let's call her Irene, works in education. She doesn't have a huge salary, but she does okay. While her husband, we'll call him Carl, will retire next year, and he's retiring from a very well-paying job. They live in the home that he bought before they met, only his name is on the deed. They pool their finances for household expenses, and she also contributes to the mortgage. With their recent marriage came the issue of organizing their affairs, among which was a will. The problem is that Carl is dead set on wanting his inheritance split equally between his 4 kids and Irene. This means they each inherit 20%, regardless of their ages or situation, with no caveats about leaving Irene and the younger kids in the house while the kids are underage. Essentially, Irene will have to sell the house to give each of the kids their share. Carl also doesn't want to make different arrangements while his 2 youngest kids are underage, as he is adamant that they should be treated equally. While this is fine on principle, the reality is that Carl will most likely be the first to pass away, and given his age, it's not likely to happen while his kids are still underage. The notary was a bit baffled by his choices, which he brought up at the meeting to discuss the terms. Irene had no idea this was Carl's plan, and she feels vulnerable, and honestly, understandably so in my opinion. The notary tried to suggest to Carl that it would be more prudent to set conditions about the ages of the kids, and perhaps also to have a surviving spouse live in the house, which is then sold and distributed among the kids once the spouse passes away too, with all of that being split up equally, of course. Now, here's the thing. Carl was not open to any provisions that the notary suggested for Irene having some form of buffer while the kids are still at home. He all but called Irene a gold digger and said he was sure that she was resourceful enough to take care of the kids, but that he had to think about 4 kids and not just 2. Carl seems to love all 4 kids equally, and as a side note, his older kids do not like Irene, and that is mutual. They sided with their mother in the divorce, since Irene met Carl after the divorce, which the ex and the older kids don't believe. Irene came back from the notary crying her eyes out. I dropped off something at their house by chance and came while they were having an argument about Carl's choices. Carl considers me to be a rational, intelligent person in his words and asked what my opinion was. But when I sided with Irene, he got angry with me and called me a jerk, all because I didn't realize that important life choices should be made with logic and not emotions. But I pointed out that his choices seem illogical and potentially harmful to his 2 younger kids, but he just straight up disagreed. So honestly, am I the jerk for speaking up in the way that I did? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, and I think Carl absolutely needs to check himself before he ruins his relationship with Irene. The way he has this set up now really does kind of ruin Irene because she's not gonna have a place to live. And for him to be like, oh, you're just a gold digger. What are you talking about? That's insane in my opinion. So no, you are definitely not the jerk for speaking your mind because this guy absolutely had it coming. My entitled manager says that she's gonna write me up with salary deduction if I won't give a doctor's note for wanting my time off. So I decide to maliciously comply, forcing her to not only give me 3 extra days of paid sick leave, but also getting paid out the 120 hours overtime that I wasn't given. And I'm honestly so satisfied by getting this revenge. Here's what happened. So I've been working for this company for 3 years already. I work on retail and our managers are always micromanaging and will write us up each time, even just by breathing. And you can tell that this is how they really are, just so far up all of our noses all the time. Especially since one time, I was written up for eating during my lunch break in our shop, but that's a story for another time. Now, for just a bit of background, my days off are scheduled every Thursday, and I was already feeling sick before my day off. I had waited until this day to rest and hope that I could feel better, but when the end of my day off comes along, I still feel sick. So I inform my boss if I can use my excess hours and not come to work the next day since I am so sick. For a bit of context, our company never pays for our overtime, but expects us to work 12 hours every single day, and every day they give us 2 hours excess. And since I've never requested until that particular day, I had racked up about 120 excess hours overtime, which can be used for days off. I had only requested 1 extra day off, which would amount to maybe 10 hours to be deducted from my long extra hours accumulated. But it was then that my boss did something that honestly blew my mind. She said she was gonna write me up if I don't provide a doctor's note, and she informed me that even if I provide one, she won't deduct it to my hours. So I comply, and I went to the doctor, and I take a medical note, and I was given a 3-day recommended rest, and I sent it to my manager. So now she has no choice but to let me have 3 additional days of paid sick leave, and I won't be back to the shop until Monday, instead of just giving me the 1 day so I can get some rest. Saturday comes along, and the shop has a lot of issues without me, and my reliever is having a hard time coping from work, so my manager actually calls me, and you know what? I just didn't respond to any of her messages, nor any of her calls, and I just wanted to rest well. Fast forward to Monday, and I actually reported her to the company to the labor's claim. The company was forced to pay me the 120 hours of overtime, and it's so great to see things work out in my favor. Yeah, that's a classic case of a manager having some kind of power trip, and instead of just listening to their employee and being like, okay, you get the extra day off, they now get to deal with their employee being gone for 3 days instead of 1. Seriously, just give people the time off that they need to feel better. I will never understand a manager who's gonna be like, oh, if you take any hours off without a doctor's note, I'm gonna write you up. That is so counterintuitive, and I would hate having to work for someone like that. So good for the original poster for reporting them and getting those overtime hours, because the way she was treating you is absolutely unacceptable. Entitled coworkers demand that me and my department never use their computers ever again, despite the fact that the only time we use their computers is when we're covering their shift. So I decided to maliciously comply, resulting in them scrambling to find someone to cover for them when I refused to do so. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I used to work permanent nights. On nights, we often had sickness at the last minute that no one was willing to come in and cover. So we all used to help out one another. We didn't do it for the praise or for the additional money, even though there wasn't any. We did it because we were colleagues for years, and there was literally no one else. Inevitably, our work was taken for granted. The managers never thanked us for helping them out of this mess, but they also started to to assume that we would cover everything. So they made less and less effort to arrange cover for absence, or even planned absences that they knew about in advance. One night before work, I came into work and received an awful email complaining about staff in our department using the computers of another department. Now, we had our own computers, but the only time my department ever used the other department's computers was when we were covering their absence. The email chain showed the other department complaining about us to my manager, who sent out an email to all the night staff in my department saying to us, "From now on, do not use the other department's computers." Now, when I read that, I was fuming because, as I said, we only did it to help out and to stop the other departments having to cover night staff on such short notice. So I thought to myself, okay, fine, that's how it is then. The very next night, the other department is short-staffed again. The supervisor on that shift asked me to cover their department, but I just straight up say, nope, I can't do that. I've been told not to use their computers by my manager. The supervisor then says, oh no, that's okay, you can use them. But I say to her, no, I can't. My manager told me not to under any circumstances. So she gets her manager to call me, the same manager who complained about us, and says to me, for this one shift, you can use our computers, as if she's doing me any kind of favor. So I say to her, no, I really can't. You are not my manager. I cannot defy my manager's instructions. And you know what? Because they can't get my manager on the line that late at night, another supervisor had to come in last minute and cover the shift. And I honestly am so glad I was able to get back at these people, especially after all the mess they made for me and my coworkers. Yeah, these people found out that you shouldn't bite the hand that feeds you, because it sounds like the original poster and their department literally bailed out this other department so many times. So for them to act like, oh my god, stop using our computers, and completely forgetting that this department literally covers your back almost all the time, like that in my opinion shows how spoiled this other department was, and it further proves in my mind that, you know what, sometimes it is okay to say no, that you should never be expected to cover someone else's shift, especially if that person's gonna act this ungrateful. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that her daughter would have a better life if she gave up her vices? Because right now she is very mad at me, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female, and I've been friends with someone we will call Emily since middle school. We're the same age, and I just want to preface a couple things. Emily and I had similar upbringings. We grew up on the poverty line, using food banks and being close to being evicted as children. I am also child-free by choice, as I am self-aware enough right now to know that I'm too selfish of a person now to have children. I had nothing as a kid, and I want all my things right now. Emily also is a relatively selfish person, but she is definitely not self-aware and does not like to sacrifice her toys in life for anybody. Unfortunately, this also includes her 6-year-old daughter, who we will call Emma. Emily has many vices that she enjoys. She enjoys shopping, alcohol, fast food, and most of all, cigarettes and the herb, if you know what I mean. Money is tight for everyone, but she ensures that she always has what she needs, especially those last two. In the past few months, Emma has asked for several things, and the answer has always been no. The biggest one being a bike for her birthday, and then more recently, swim lessons, as it's June and her friends all go to the rec center to swim. Yesterday, while running errands, we were in a store and Emma asked her again if she could have swim lessons because she wanted to be able to go to the pool with her friends over summer break from school. Emily once again told her that they were too expensive and that they couldn't afford it. And when she said that, Emma started to cry. Emily apologized to her and explained that money was tight before turning around to pay for her 2 cartons of cigarettes. When we got back to their place, Emma, who was still upset, went to the couch and put on a movie. I pulled Emily into her bedroom and I took the opportunity to explain that I believe it's important to Emma to take those lessons. Emily then repeated that she simply didn't have the money, and I said to her, you don't have the money for her, but you have the money to smoke? Emily then immediately became defensive and called me a jerk who just doesn't understand what it's like to be a single mom. Now, I agreed with her, but I reminded her that we both know what it's like to miss out on things in childhood, and it felt like Emma was going to suffer the same fate. Emily basically told me to leave if I was going to accuse her of being a bad parent before leaving her bedroom and storming outside to have a cigarette. I ended up leaving after saying goodbye to Emma, and now Emily is refusing to speak to me. I am just worried that this kid is going to be on the outside looking in because her mom isn't prioritizing her, but I also know that I could have worded things much better. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I'm not sure what to do with Emily. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because it really does sound like Emily's neglecting her daughter pretty much across the board. And also, it's not a bad thing for a kid to have swim lessons. Like, that really is a valuable skill to have no matter who you are, but most especially if you're a kid. Leaving her to figure out how to swim on her her own is just completely irresponsible. And she's missing out on having fun with her friends, which in my opinion is just so unfair. So no, you're not the jerk for telling the truth, because clearly, based on how defensive Emily got, this is something that she clearly has been thinking about. And just because you said what she was probably thinking, in my opinion, doesn't make you judgmental or a bad friend. Am I the jerk for exposing my mom's lifelong grudge against me, all because I was born on the wrong day that she didn't plan for? Here's what happened. So to start things out, I'm the middle child of 5 siblings, and I always knew that my mom treated me very differently from the rest of my siblings. It caused my parents' marriage to end because my dad made it very clear that he wouldn't tolerate her being so different with me, and this was after he tried to figure out why she was so different with me. A few close friends knew and said it was postpartum depression from when she had me, that apparently only affected her ability to bond with me and not any of my 4 siblings, just me, the middle child. I have a sibling younger than me and she bonded with her just fine. I was a teenager when I got into a fight with my mom one day and she accused me of always hating her and never wanting her to be happy. I asked what she meant by that and she told me that I had to come into this world on the one day that she had other plans, that it was bad enough I was overdue when I was born, but I apparently prevented her from reading a book that released that day that she made plans to read months in advance. She told me that I just had to be born that day, so she was too tired to read it on the release date, and that she was weeks behind. She said that I couldn't even be born normally like my siblings, and I was a C-section baby. She told me that I messed up her plans so bad, and I never even seemed to care about it. Then she mentioned how much I cried when she was around, and how good I did with my dad. She said it made her seem like she was such a monster, and none of my other siblings were like that. She told me I clearly always wanted to come between her and dad, and she was pretty serious about it too, with her finishing up by saying that I started screwing her over the day I was born. Now, it really shocked me when she told me all of this. At first, I didn't believe it, and I just didn't want to believe it. Dad and I even did a DNA test around that time because we were like, okay, maybe she's making up a dumb reason so we won't know that she cheated. But I am definitely my dad's kid. The DNA confirmed it. My relationship with my mom is as bad as the day I was born, apparently, and I get a hard time from some family friends and extended family members who see me not being close with my mom as me being awful to her for no reason. They put the bad relationship on me. And at my grandparents' house on Saturday, I got so tired of the comments and my mom sneering at me the whole time that I finally exposed what she said to me when I was a teenager and the blame that she put on me for being born on the wrong day as the reason why we have a bad relationship. My mom half admitted because she got so angry that she verbally lashed out at me. It created an absolute nightmare, and some family members think I made a big deal out of nothing, but others were disgusted by my mom. I was told I was wrong to expose her like that, and my mom said that I had no business doing that. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Yeah, your mom's a massive piece of garbage. Like seriously, your mom's a horrible person. Who would hate their child all because you couldn't read a book that you were waiting for months in advance? Like seriously, that is really crazy for someone to say, and there's no way that's a rational reason why you would hate your kid. Like the original poster didn't ask to be born at that time. Like they had literally no control over that. So for the mom to be like, oh yeah, you ruined my life the day that you were born. Like no, he didn't. He didn't do anything to you. The original poster has been putting up with this kind of treatment for like their entire life. They've been badmouthed, they've been treated terribly, and then when the truth is finally let out, they find out that this is the reason why she doesn't like him. Like, I'm sorry, I love to read just like the next person, but for her to seriously treat her child like this, all because she couldn't read a book on the release date, like that goes beyond being a bad mother. That straight up proves that this lady's insane. And you know what? When it comes to you exposing her in front of the entire family, I would have done the exact same thing. Anybody who's like, wow, you made a big deal out of nothing, or people telling you, oh, you were wrong to expose her like that. It's like, what are you talking about? She's literally being antagonistic and actively making horrible comments about the original poster behind their back, or even just making snide faces at them. Like at that point, after 21 years of dealing with that, I would have exposed her right there on the spot and felt no remorse. So anyone trying to defend her actions are complete morons, and these are not the kind of people you want in your life. And in my opinion, I think it absolutely is your business to tell everybody the truth, that your insane mother hates you because she couldn't read a book, because that's what this all just boils down to. That's the entire reason she doesn't like you, and that is just not a good reason at all. So no, I would not feel guilty about this in the slightest, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would be making plans to never talk to her ever again, because this behavior is legitimately crazy, and you do not deserve this in the slightest. My crazy entitled fiance cancels our wedding a week before simply because because he was so angry after a minor argument that we had. But now, after reality has set in, my fiance has come back to me begging for another chance. But after being treated so poorly and humiliated in front of all of our friends and family, I now no longer trust him, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So, as the title states, my ex-fiance has canceled our wedding a week before it took place. We've been together for about 6 years, and we've lived together for context. And what happened basically was an argument that escalated. We were heading to my program graduation, which is a smaller event of about 10 students, and on that morning as we were getting ready, I asked if he would be okay to wear one of his button-ups instead of the shirt that he had on so we could get a nice photo. When I said that, he was annoyed, and he snapped at me by saying, "Why do I have to do things for others?" And I told him that he truly doesn't have to, and that I was just asking, but ultimately it is his choice. He ended up putting the button-up on, and we arrived at the ceremony, and everything went fine, and he was very happy for me. However, on the way home in the car, traffic was filling up and he was annoyed. I offered an alternative route that I know will cut down on some of the time, and the exit to that route was coming up. Well, he didn't take it, and I was slightly annoyed about it because he was cranky with me about traffic. So I asked why he didn't take it. Well, when I said that, he started full on yelling that my tone is rude and that he doesn't have to drive the way that I tell him to. I replied by saying that I literally just asked and that I don't actually care about what route he takes. He was the one having any kind of problem with traffic. He then blew up and blamed me for getting him upset. When we got home, I apologized and explained that I didn't mean to come across as mean. I also said that screaming doesn't help in any situation and that we really should have talked instead. He basically explained that an apology doesn't solve anything and that he needs such things to not happen, otherwise he would continue exploding at me because, according to him, that's the only time I listen to him. After a few hours, we spoke again, with him apologizing for yelling and I apologized for the miscommunication that happened. Now, despite resolving this, later that night, I was crying due to the fact that he so easily yells at me when he's upset. I was so upset that even on such an important day for me, I felt like he was picking fights. And to add to this, yelling is such a red flag for me, and I never do that to him or anyone for that matter. The next morning, we were having breakfast, and he asked me why I seemed so gloomy, so I told him that everything's okay, but I'm just processing what happened yesterday. He then asked me to please share with him, so I told him that I felt like my special day was kind of ruined, all because of the fighting about things that we could have easily resolved. Well, when I said that, he just immediately lost his mind and started getting angry again. He blamed me for the fights, and when I replied that I didn't think it's fair to blame me, he got angrier and said that he can't do this, that I'm not a good communicator, and that he can't get married like this. And when he said that, I was just completely shocked. I thought he was talking out of emotion like many times before, but this time, he actually ended up sending a mass text message to all of our guests to let them know that the wedding is called off. I was flabbergasted at the quickness, and I was so confused. We started arguing and then had to leave for our days. Later that day, when we returned, I asked if this is truly something that he wants to call off everything, and he responded with a confident yes. Now, what I thought was an action out of anger seemed to be a solid decision for him. For the rest of the night and the next day, I tried to fix things between us. After many hours of talking and lots of crying from my end, he kept explaining that I don't communicate well and that this cancellation was my fault. I tried to offer some kind of solutions, but he was full on with the decision to cancel and break up. I asked if we could give it another day or two, that this is what he wants before we cancel the venue. Well, he declined and asked to cancel the venue and the vendors immediately. So that's exactly what we did. The next day, I went on an errands run and then I met with my friend. It was truly such a hard day and I was so heartbroken, and I was still digesting everything that happened. When I came home, he asked to talk and started crying that he regrets everything he said in the last days, that he didn't mean it, he was angry, and he wasn't thinking straight. He said he will start therapy and he wanted to do couples counseling now as well, which is something I offered many times. Anyways, he apologized profusely and kept asking if we can mend everything or whether he messed up. Now, I was almost sure that this regret would come along, and honestly, maybe it was mean to say this, but I said, yeah, you messed up big time. You made a rash decision that hurt our relationship big time. There is no going back from here. He pretty much begged for another chance, but everything is canceled and my trust is completely shattered. The wedding is supposed to be in 2 days. His aunt was supposed to be on the way to our house so that she could help us pack our decorations, and now there's just no way we can schedule everything again, and frankly, I don't want to at this point. This is not the first time he cancels plans or or breaks up with me during a disagreement. Everyone is telling us that this is fixable, that clearly we love each other, so if we want, this situation doesn't have to be the end of the relationship. But I just don't understand how. So much time, effort, and money has gone into this wedding, and that's now completely done. And plus, more importantly, I simply can't trust him anymore. And at this point, I just don't know what to do. We were supposed to go on honeymoon right afterwards, so now I'm thinking about going by myself. He asked if we can go together and spend that time to fix things, but I'm just questioning everything right now. But I'm thinking about going by myself so I can do some soul searching. Should I call it quits and move on with my life, or take his word and start couples counseling? I love him with my entire heart, and we had many loving experiences between us over the years. We don't have any issues aside from such incidents, but I don't know whether it's actually possible to come back from this one, because right now I am very frustrated, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Wow, this is a horrible situation to be stuck in. For starters, if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would ever go back to this guy. Like seriously, just look at the way he's acting. This guy made the rash decision overnight to cancel your wedding and text a bunch of people to try and air out your dirty laundry, all over an argument about traffic the day before. Like, it almost seems like he did this just to punish you for making him mad, but even then, this guy is 30 years old. There's no good reason for him to freak out like that and then start burning down everything he's ever worked for with the original poster, all because he's upset about an argument that he escalated. And it really does suck that he's like, oh yeah, you made me angry. You're the reason this all fell apart. You're not good at communicating. This guy's projecting so hard, it's not even funny. He is literally just saying all the things that he's doing to you and trying to gaslight you into believing that you're the problem. But no, you are definitely not the problem. This guy is a giant walking red flag, and from the sounds of it, it does seem like you're really catching on to that. Now, for me, the icing on the cake is when he came back and said, oh, I'm so sorry, can we fix this? And I'm just so glad that you came back and said, no, we can't fix it. You messed up big time. And that, in my opinion, was the best decision you've ever made in this scenario, because I think in a roundabout way, this guy was testing you. He wanted to see how close to the line he could go with how crazy he was acting. This guy literally canceled your wedding a week before, and then he comes back to you and says, oh, I'm so sorry, let's please try to fix this. I'll go to couples counseling with you. It's like, dude, at that point, this is way too late. You've ruined everything, you've completely humiliated the original poster, and in my opinion, there is no way you can ever come back from this. Like, I would feel the exact same way the original poster feels, where they just straight up say, no, I just can't trust this guy anymore. So in my opinion, I think this guy did you a huge favor, because he does not sound like a fun person to be around or someone you want to spend the rest of your life dealing with, because this guy does not sound healthy or safe to be around in the slightest. And I think that you deserve so much better than what this guy is trying to give you. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not inviting someone for dinner, all because she made a big deal online about me having a cat in my house? Because now she's saying that I'm a mean girl who could have easily invited her to this party. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. A while back, I posted a picture to my Instagram stories of my cat sitting next to my counter on his own stool while I was cooking. And mind you, he was watching while also being next to my counter, not anywhere near the food. He doesn't go on counters and he doesn't go anywhere near the food. My friend, who we will call Rose, reposted it with her own caption. She put a puke face emoji and says, "You just can't eat at everybody's house." Now, I ignored it and went about my business. She is, by the way, very much the type of person who just regurgitates whatever popular phrase she sees on social media. If there's pineapple on pizza, she'll call you a monster. If raisins are in cookies, then this is why she has trust issues. And she also doesn't trust people who don't like dogs. Stuff like that just makes her completely delusional. She has other traits that make up for it, but truthfully, I do tend to avoid any one-on-one time that I might have with her. Fast forward, and about a month ago, I hosted a small get-together so I could show off some of the cookware that I obtained. I had a whole little shindig with home-prepared food, and I had a lot of fun times with my pals. But here's the thing, I didn't invite Rose. She found out after folks posted on their Instagram stories, and she confronted me over it, saying that I was giving high school mean girl vibes. I told her that she has made it clear that she doesn't eat at the homes of people who have cats, so why would I invite her to a dinner party? Well, when I said that, she got defensive and said that she could have just come and not eaten anything, but I said that in the future, maybe she should be more careful about what she says, because to me, it was very clear. Rose has continued to tell people that I'm giving high school mean girl turns into a nurse later on in life, despite the fact that I'm an accountant. So am I really the jerk for not inviting her? Because right now, I am seriously annoyed. Yeah, I'm right there with the original poster. If someone's gonna complain like that and make some wild assumptions about my house, especially unprompted, then in my opinion, that's honestly everything I would need to know about them. Because here's the thing, if someone shows you exactly how they are, or exactly how they feel about you or a situation, then I personally think you should believe them. Sure, you can assume the best out of people and think maybe they're like being sarcastic or something like that, but it seems like this Rose lady has a really mean side to her, and that is just not fair for the original poster or anybody else that might have to deal with her. So no, you're not the jerk, because honestly, I would have done the exact same thing. My entitled neighbor complains about any noise that's ever made in the apartment building that we live in. And after dealing with this nearly every single day for the past few weeks, I now feel completely trapped in my own home. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to start off by saying that our neighbor is downright crazy. We've lived in our apartment for 4 years and we love it. However, the past year has been a nightmare. We've gotten a new neighbor, not in our own hallway, but she is in the adjoining building and hallway, so she shares a wall with us. The first few weeks were fine. We talked with her and told her that if there was ever an issue, we were open to communication. We've never had any issues before, but due to us having a dog, even though it's a small dog, we'd like to be upfront with all of our neighbors, just so we can have some kind of healthy relationship with the people around us. But after the first few weeks, the problems really started happening. Suddenly, we got complaints about our dog barking, and not just one complaint, but we would instead get like 3 or 4 a week. Our dog is the most gentle old soul there is, and he only barks on 3 occasions: when the doorbell rings and he's happy to see you, when he gets spooked by something, which is rare, and when we play, which we only do for maybe 5 to 10 minutes at a time, because we know the sound can be annoying. He never barks when he's home alone or otherwise. He's very chill and very mellow. He's made friends with everyone in our hallway, and several of them have been dog sitting if we ever had to leave for extended periods of time, and they all say he's the easiest dog to look after. Anyways, we talked to the new superintendent, who wasn't allowed to elaborate who the complaints were coming from, as they were reported anonymously. But we soon found out very quickly, because the neighbor, who I'll call Karen from now on, started banging on the walls whenever she felt like we were too loud. One weekend at around 10:30 a.m., we had been playing with our dogs for maybe 5 minutes when she aggressively banged on our wall. Mind you, we live in a concrete building with 30-centimeter thick walls. I talked to everybody else in our hallway, but no one was bothered with our dog. We live in a building with several other people, and in the surrounding buildings there are dogs as well. Dogs who bark and make all kinds of noise. We tried to keep it down, and for a while we thought that was the end of it. But recently, this entitled Karen started complaining again, not just to the landlord and the superintendent, but also in our Facebook group designated for our area. While we were away on holiday out of the country, this entitled Karen decided that now was the time to do a long rant in said Facebook group, telling everyone how horrible we were at keeping our dog quiet, that we make him bark just to annoy her. And she even made some really inappropriate comments about our life, basically implying that we're making loud noises on purpose. And now at this point, I feel trapped in my own home. I'm afraid to do anything that might set her off and give us another complaint. But luckily, the superintendent is on our side. He and the other neighbors have told us that we're not the only ones she's complained about. She's complained about a newborn baby that was crying, and a developmentally disabled child who can't talk and therefore makes noises instead. She even complained about someone talking on their own balcony. This entitled Karen told that person to respect her privacy and that she didn't want to hear what they were talking about, even though they were 3 apartments away. I honestly hate this woman so much, and so do all of my neighbors, and I'm honestly feeling so stuck and I just don't know what to do. Yeah, this lady sounds super entitled. Apartment buildings are just noisy in general. People are doing their own things, they have all kinds of stuff going on, and frankly, people are going to make noise. And she knew that moving into this place. So I wouldn't feel too bad about this, because clearly she's on the wrong side of this situation, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would be banding together with all my other neighbors and possibly forwarding some kind of formal complaint against her, as it really seems like she's only complaining on purpose, and not because there's any actual noise in the building. Because the way she's acting is super unfair, and you deserve to have a respectful neighbor instead of whatever this entitled Karen is giving you instead. My wife has been spending way too much time with a former coworker to the point where it's disrupting our marriage and causing a lot of fighting between the two of us. And now, after noticing so many red flags from this guy, I'm now convinced that something might be going on between the two of them. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 32-year-old male, and I've been married to my wife going on 9 years. Recently, we've had a fight over one of her former coworkers. And for the sake of the story, we'll call this coworker Matt. Matt and my wife hadn't been working together for a long time, maybe a couple of months at most, and I noticed some behavior that had me suspicious and feeling disrespected. My wife began constantly talking about Matt. It was as if every sentence from her was in some relation to Matt. It would be Matt this and Matt that. It eventually got to the point that I asked her if she could speak about him less, as it was becoming annoying that every conversation had to do with him. A few weeks later, my wife tells me that she is going to have a girls' night out with her female coworkers, and I think that's cool that she's going to go out and have some fun with them. She states that they'll be going to an audition for one coworker, and then they're going to hit the bars. And at the time, I believed that this was all good, but then just guess who's also going to be there for this all-female event. That's right, Matt's going to be there too. I found it odd that an all-female get-together would also involve a guy, and just to get a stereotype out of the way, Matt is straight. Another time involves Matt inviting my wife and son to a trampoline place. So when that happened, I took the opportunity to invite myself to meet the guy who my wife constantly talks about and invites or even tags along with everything that she does. We get to the place and spend about 2 hours there. Matt has spoken to me 0 times outside of introductions and won't even acknowledge that I exist. Now, I am quite an intimidating person, so it can be difficult to approach me and engage with me. That being said, if I were Matt and had the opportunity to speak with a woman's husband that I'm constantly talking to and inviting her places, I would absolutely get to know him. This gave me another red flag about this guy. Time goes by and my wife is talking about Matt 0, but still texting him all the time. One Saturday after our son's gymnastics class, we get home and my wife exclaims, "Well, there goes my convertible ride." Now I'm confused and I ask what she's talking about. She then tells me that Matt bought a new convertible and was going to leave as soon as we got home to go ride around with him. And this was yet another red flag as to why this wasn't even brought up before. I believe everyone can do as they want and don't need permission to do things that they want to do, but I do think that giving your partner a heads up prior to doing things is still important. My wife starts telling me that Matt has some gifts for our son, and I just find it odd that another man is buying gifts for my son when it is neither the holidays nor his birthday. And this gives me a yellow flag at the very least about what this guy is doing. Now, here's the kicker that relates to him not speaking to me. When I would pick my wife up from work, my son would be with me. Matt would deliberately walk in front of my car and a couple of spaces down before returning by going around the back of my car and only speaking to my son. Now, I found this extremely disrespectful, as he went out of his way to not acknowledge me or speak to me, and would sneakily try to speak to my son and my wife. Matt decided he would invite my wife and other women to a rave, and there's nothing wrong with dancing, but the issue arises that he did not invite any males to go, nor did he invite any romantic partners of the women. Well, I told my wife that I would like to go, and she told Matt, and when she told him, he canceled the plans. And this was yet another huge red flag. This guy would be willing to invite women to a rave and then cancel when a romantic partner decides that he would like to go too. He tried to shift the blame onto me by saying he couldn't buy the tickets because I hadn't made up my mind even though I said I was going. After all of this, I decided that Matt is not a good guy, and he is trying to weasel his way into my marriage. I mean, there's just too much that I'm seeing that I just can't ignore. Finally, we get to what has caused a huge fight between my wife and I, which is a stupid package. My wife ordered something, and me, being curious, asked her what it was. Well, she tells me it's none of your effing business, and this just brings up a giant red flag. I then ask her who it's for, and again, I get the exact same response. So eventually, I pick up the package and I ask my wife what it is, and yet again, it's apparently none of my business. Well, I get angry because of all of this Matt stuff, and I yell out, "Why are you being so secretive?" She yells at me, saying that it's a gift for Father's Day, and she wanted it to be a surprise. And yes, for the record, I did think it was a gift for Matt. So now, my wife doesn't feel like I trust her, even though it's not her that I don't trust, and now she is not speaking with me. I find it ridiculous that we are having a fight over a random coworker that should mean absolutely nothing to our relationship. Yet here we are. You would think after almost 9 years of marriage that some nobody wouldn't be able to cause this amount of friction. So seriously, am I overreacting and thinking that Matt is up to no good? Am I overreacting that Matt might be trying to weasel his his way in, and that my wife is being blind to everything that he is trying? What should I do? Yeah, this sounds like an exhausting situation, and the fact that your wife isn't able to have some kind of like self-reflection about all of this, in my opinion, speaks volumes to what is actually happening. Because I think you're right. I think Matt is absolutely trying to weasel his way into your marriage, and in my opinion, it's almost like Matt has become your wife's boyfriend. Like, this guy avoids you like the plague. He doesn't talk to you, he doesn't look at you, but still has the audacity to try and talk to your son without talking to you first. Like, that part alone made me incredibly angry, because in my opinion, if you're gonna talk to somebody's kid, you absolutely talk to the parents first. You don't just walk up and talk to the kids, you address the parents first and foremost, and you don't go around that just because you might know the kids under some circumstances. That is incredibly inappropriate and super sketchy. Like, that alone would make me lose my mind if I was in the original poster shoes. On top of that, all these parties that Matt is trying to organize, where the wife is invited but the husband isn't, is all just super sketchy and just does not look good. And hey, maybe this is innocent. Maybe there's nothing going on between the two of them, and it might just be a really good friendship of some kind. But if it really was that good of a friendship, then Matt would step up and try to be your friend as well. But instead, he's been running away from you and trying to like actively avoid you at all cost. So no, you are definitely not overreacting, because I definitely think that Matt is up to something that's really sketchy. And in my opinion, I think it would really be good to try and get to the bottom of this, because this scenario sounds like an absolute nightmare. My entitled sister refuses to parent her kids, allowing them to destroy my house and deface my property. And after she told me that she does gentle parenting and that she doesn't believe in any kind of discipline or punishments, I said enough is enough, resulting in me kicking her entire family out of my house, as I simply couldn't take their awful behavior any longer. So now my sister's calling me a jerk, stating that I had no business to kick them out of my house. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. This story also came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. My younger sister and her family, which includes her husband, and her 2 kids, ages 3 and 5, were visiting my husband and I and staying at our home for a week. For a little bit of background, we don't live in the same state. I've had kids of my own, but they are young adults now, and they're out of the house. My sister is much younger than me and is very much still in the young family stage, and we've always had a pretty close relationship despite our age gap. My sister does gentle parenting. I had never heard of that before she came to stay with us, because I guess I'm just out of the loop since my kids are fully grown now. She explained to me that gentle parenting means that they don't do timeouts and they don't do grounding, but instead they just talk about their feelings. I thought it was a bit odd because it sounds like there's zero discipline going on, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to rock the boat. Well, that is until I saw this gentle parenting in action, and trust me when I say this, I was completely appalled. During the first 2 days of their stay, her daughter drew on my walls with crayon, and her son pulled up flowers I had recently planted in my garden bed and threw a rock at my car parked in the driveway. To top it all off, they both kept constantly pulling my golden retriever's hair and hitting my dog in the face. My dog is very sweet and a little on the older side, so she is very calm. She never bit or even attempted to bite, or did anything that would harm or spook the children. In every single instance, I was expecting my sister or her husband to discipline the kids, but they never did. So I stepped up and I did, or at least I tried. Anytime I would tell her kids to stop or scolded them in the slightest, it made my sister lose her mind. She told me it's not my place to discipline them, but I told her that someone has to, because they're messing up my home. But I went ahead and agreed that it should be their parents who scold them. However, it seems their parents are not willing to do that. I told her they need a fairly stern punishment for what they've been doing, and she started going off about how they refuse to spank their kids in the same way that we were spanked when we were kids. I told her that I'm not suggesting she spank her kids, but a stern talking to and making them clean up what they destroyed would be a good idea. She said that what her kids were doing was not worth what I would call discipline. All she did in every instance was ask them, "What kind of feelings are you having that made you do that?" And that was all she ever did. So I realized this behavior was not going to stop, and my husband and I told them that they need to find a hotel or they just need to go home. Even though we had planned for them to stay for a full week, we simply couldn't handle more than 2 days because of this gentle parenting. I told her that gentle parenting is going to cause her kids to have a very hard life, and there's going to be a rude awakening someday, with them probably even having jail time at some point. She argued back and really lost it when I told her that this hippie gentle parenting crap is just a complete scam and it will ruin your kid's life, which I do regret now, but I was so boiled over in the moment. Now at this point, she won't talk to me, and our mom says that I'm in the wrong for kicking them out when they planned on staying a lot longer. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. Yeah, your sister's delusional if she thinks she's parenting her kids at all, because from the sounds of it, she just lets them run amok around the house and do whatever they want. And that really sounds obnoxious and very unfair. These people were letting their kids run around your house and basically deface and destroy your property. Not to mention the fact that they're hitting the dog in the face and pulling out their hair. Like the very second they start messing with that dog would be the moment I would freak out and be like, get out of my house. But even beyond that, for your sister to be like, oh yeah, we're just gentle parenting. That honestly is so ridiculous because I'm pretty sure you're just not parenting your kids at all. If anything, you're letting them run around and do whatever they want, and this is only going to make her life a living nightmare later on, and it's going to set up her kids for a rude awakening. Because I've personally seen people who raise their kids in this way, and it really does not work out in the end, because those kids grow up to be incredibly spoiled and very rotten, just right to the core. So no, you are definitely not the jerk for kicking them out, because their behavior was super disrespectful. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. This next story also came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit, and again, check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not having time for a close friend, all while I was planning my wedding that was happening in a month? Because right now he is very upset with me, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My husband and I got married a few weeks ago, and my mom had gotten the only reservation for the church that I grew up in, and it was a month away from the day that we got engaged. So my mother and I were tasked with planning this wedding in only 1 month. I also have a male best friend who we will just call John for the sake of the story. We used to be very close until I got into the relationship with my now husband. A little after I got into that relationship, he called me twice while really drunk to ask me about the Bible and why I serve a God that's done so many awful things. At one point in one of those conversations, my boyfriend at the time had to take over because he would get frustrated that I was using context as an explanation, and he would call me stupid and tell me that I must be fine with all these awful things in the Bible. So I was crying so hard that I couldn't even talk, and with that, my boyfriend took over. John was very angry and said some things that should have been kept between us. He said that it was my last chance with him, and I honestly think my brain at this point associated him with unnecessary stress. Fast forward, and my boyfriend and I got engaged, with all of the wedding planning starting right away. I mean, there was no breaks and no days off. There was only time to plan for the wedding. Sometimes I would call John and vent about how frustrated and tired I was because my mother and I are on totally different schedules, and it was really difficult for me to keep up. But for the most part, I didn't have time for my phone. I was simply too busy with wedding planning. About 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out that I'm pregnant, and that took a lot out of me. I mean, the exhaustion was absolutely unbearable. So, cut to a few days into my honeymoon, and I started to have some energy and some time. So, I tried to get in touch with John, who normally picks up pretty fast. Well, he wouldn't pick up, so after a few days trying to call and text with no response, I finally said, "It seems like you want nothing to do with me. Is everything okay?" He then said to me, "Do I have to point out that as soon as you got engaged, you ignored me for months?" To which I tried to explain that I saw how it could appear that way, but that I was planning a wedding in a month, and it was so much that I had to do, and I was pregnant, and it was taking a lot out of me. And I also said that I haven't really been on my phone in general very much at all. And after I said that, he just stopped responding. After a day or so, I texted him asking what was going on. He seemed angry that I ignored him, but was now ignoring me. So I asked him, "Which is it? Do you want this friendship or not?" And he said to me, "No, I told you this was your last chance with me. I went from a big part of your life to having no part at all. It doesn't matter that you were busy. People make time for those who are important to them. I am done being hurt by you. You won't hurt me ever again. I am simply done." I waited a while, and then I responded by saying, "Okay, if that's your choice, then so be it. But if you can't understand that life happens, then you deserve no place in my life anyways." So am I the jerk for the way that I handled this? Because right now I'm very frustrated and I simply don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk here at all. John sounds like a needy weirdo, and he seriously thought you were going to prioritize him over your wedding that was happening very quickly. Like seriously, this guy calls you up drunk and starts berating you because of your beliefs, and then tries to sit there and be like, "Wow, I played such a big role in your life and now I'm just not even there." Like he does know that you got married to your boyfriend, right? You literally just found out that you got pregnant and you planned a wedding in 1 month's time. That is so much work and stress that you have to deal with that honestly any reasonable friend would be like, "Oh yeah, they're just crazy crazy busy right now. And to be completely honest, it kind of seems like John has like romantic feelings for you in some kind of way. Like it's such a weird time to be like, oh, you need to pay attention to me right now. Almost as if he's throwing some kind of temper tantrum at your expense. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. John has a weird attitude, and I just don't think he's a good friend. Because any reasonable friend, even at a casual level, would never treat you this way in the slightest. My entitled aunt shows up unannounced, right in the middle of me taking care of my dad who's currently going through cancer treatment. And I'm honestly so sick of her attitude, and I hope she never comes back. Here's what happened. My father was recently diagnosed with a serious form of cancer, and he has 5 brothers and sisters, and all of them are very entitled and have no boundaries. I moved here to be the caregiver for him, and he has a sister who we will call Gina. Gina is not her real name. Gina decided to visit all the way from Colorado without contacting me or my father, and she even had her other brother drive her there and pick her up because she won't drive. She shows up and tells us that she needs a ride around town. Now, I'm working full-time caring for my dad. He is in radiation and he's very weak. Not to mention that I'm trying to coordinate his care and his home. But according to Gina, I'm supposed to drop everything just to transport them around? No, that's absolutely not happening. Eventually, she gets dropped off at my father's house, and she just sits there, not offering to help me, my dad, or provide any useful help. And then there was a meal for my dad. He can't really walk well, but got up to go to the kitchen. Gina then actually tells my dad, who's on number 13 of radiation treatment, using a walker too, by the way, to fill their cup with some of the meal. My father has cancer and limited mobility, and you're the one that expects to be served? Like, is she being serious right now? I say, Dad, Gina can get her own soup. You are ill. Then Gina says incredulously that, oh, I can get it myself, which is like, yeah, no kidding. I eventually get up and I say that I'm going for a walk. She then says to me, I know that you don't like me, but I just ignore it and I start to leave. Gina then goes into the kitchen complaining about me to my dad. I then go to confront her yet again, and I said that if you have a problem with me, you can come to me and not him. I continued by saying, do you really think it's appropriate to ask your brother, who's in radiation with cancer, to seriously serve you food when you are capable? She pauses for a second, looks me in the eye, and then repeats that she knows that I don't like her. And I'm honestly just so done with these members of my extended family because the way she acted was incredibly inappropriate. Wow, talk about being completely tone deaf to what's going on in the house. Here she has her brother, who probably is rail thin and very weak, not to mention using a walker, and she's like, oh, when you go to the kitchen, can you get me some food? It's like, what are you talking about? No, get your own food, lady. Also, why is she even showing up to this house unannounced and waltzing in here as if her brother isn't like fighting for his life? That is incredibly disrespectful, and there is legitimately no good excuse for that. That is such an inconsiderate way of treating somebody who you know has cancer. Like, the least she could do is be helpful in that kind of scenario and try to help out around the house or at least take care of herself. So truly, good for the original poster for standing up for their dad and telling this lady to get lost and take care of herself, because her attitude coming to your dad's house was completely inappropriate. And if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. My sister-in-law is trying to alienate me from my fiance, and as a result, this is causing massive problems between the two of us. And right now, I'm seriously so upset and I just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I met my fiance, who we will call Mark, on a professional conference 6 years ago. Things happened and we ended up moving in together after 2 years. He met my parents and my siblings, and he was really evasive when I wanted to meet with his family. I knew that he was at least on talking terms with his sister, who we will call Lisa, because they talked every 1 or 2 weeks on the phone, but he neither wanted to talk to me about them, nor did he want to introduce me. Now, we didn't use protection, if you know what I mean, so recently I've gotten pregnant. After we found out, Mark asked to marry me, which I agreed to on the condition that he would introduce me to his family. He really did not like the idea, and now I see why, but he agreed to it. I was really looking forward to it. I met with his parents first, and they seemed nice enough. They congratulated me on being pregnant, and overall, it went without any issues. But the day after, we met with Lisa. To start off, she refused to talk to me at all, and always would refer to me as it or even that thing. So hopefully you get the idea of how awful she was being. And then she berated me for not coming from a wealthy background like them, or being wealthy myself, and that my fiance was marrying down and debasing himself around people like me, and that he claimed he could be dating people in his class, or people who at least look good. And we eventually went home after about 20 minutes into her rant. My fiance has always been much more successful professionally, and therefore much more financially stable than I was. So there was already a power imbalance, even though it was innocuous, in our relationship. And it was always clear that he had, let's just say, a better upbringing than I did. Regardless, I felt really humiliated about the whole ordeal, and my fiance just told me that I was the one who insisted on it, which is fair, but I really hope that he would at least comfort me. About a week after that, my fiance started indirectly questioning me on things, like where I've been or what I've been doing, but I told him to just tell me directly what he is getting at, and he said that his sister told me that I'm cheating on him because I work less hours than him, and according to Lisa, who knows what I'm doing in that time. Well, we had a big fight, and Mark started becoming increasingly distant to me, which obviously stressed me out a lot. We've been sleeping in separate beds, and he's giving me the silent treatment, but I know that it's mostly Lisa overloading him with all of her BS. I mean, can I even salvage our relationship at this point? I'm past the legal time limit for anything to do with our child, if you know what I mean, and I really don't want to raise our child in a broken home. I thought of reaching out to his parents to talk some sense into him, but I could not find them on social media with any kind of certainty. So at this point, I'm very frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, I would not contact the parents at all. I think that's an awful idea, and it's only going to give more fuel for the sister to like try and really ruin your life. Because it really does sound like his sister is like the reason all of this is falling apart, and that is not fair for you at all. Like seriously, just look at the way she's acting. She didn't even refer to you by your name. She called you it or that thing. Like how awful of a human being can you be if that's how you're gonna act around someone that your brother is marrying? And also, why is Mark not stepping in and telling Lisa to get lost? The fact that he's allowing his sister to talk to you that way and then try to blame you for even wanting to meet his family in the first place is just odd to me. If he had just explained why he doesn't want the original poster to meet his family, then all of this literally could have been avoided. So no, I would not reach out to the parents, but I honestly would have a conversation with Mark, because his attitude and suspicious demeanor is not conducive to a healthy relationship, and you do not deserve this in the slightest. Am I the jerk for refusing to support my sister after she got a divorce based on the awful things she said and did during her marriage? Because right now she is very upset with me, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my sister's marriage of 3 years is ending. She was with her husband for almost 5 years in total before the relationship came to an end. Now, I saw this coming before they got married. Deep down, I never saw this marriage lasting, or not lasting happily anyways. I brought up my concerns to my sister, and she told me I was wrong because she could fix all those problems. Now, let me explain what happened. My sister married a widower. They met 9 months after his wife died, and his 3 kids were under 11 years old when they got married. The kids did not adjust to their dad dating my sister, and they didn't like my sister. They just didn't want their dad with someone else, and they didn't want everyone to move on and leave their mom in the past. He really didn't get them any support during that time, and he did nothing about any concerning or bad behavior. My sister believed that she would win them over, and they would love her and think of her as a parent in no time. But she also had a very hard time hearing about her husband's late wife or their kid's mom. She did not like her family being around the kids because she felt like they talked more about their mom after seeing their maternal relatives. She did not like the fact that they held traditions with their mom close and refused to let her in on any of them. I think my sister was just engaged at the time, but her husband mentioned wanting this dish her late wife used to cook, and he even mentioned her cookbook. Well, the kids heard him say this, and they ended up hiding the cookbook so that my sister could never see it, and she even tried to coax them into handing it over, but they just never would. They said she couldn't do the stuff their mom did because she would never be good enough for that, but my sister really believed that she could fix all of that with time. The only thing that really happened is that my sister grew to resent the kid's mom over time. She didn't like being compared to her in a negative way, and having made it clear that she was never going to be the first choice. Now, I totally understand things like that being said to you will hurt, but she literally married a man who wasn't helping his kids through the loss, and she ended up taking it out on the kids. The marriage ended 2 months ago after my sister ranted at the kids about how much she hated their mom, and she was so glad that she passed away, and then gave the husband the ultimatum of choosing her or the kids. Well, he chose them, but without being asked to choose, I fully believe he would have stayed. So now my sister is living with my parents again, and my family have rallied around her, but I simply haven't done it. I do think my sister acted right, and while I feel bad for her about some of it, but I did air concerns, and she was so arrogant that she thought she'd be able to fix everything. My sister and parents keep bringing up the fact that I'm not there for her, and how I should be in this moment. My sister asked me if I really thought she was so wrong in this that I would withhold my support, and I just said yes. She and my parents have now said that I should be supporting my sister no matter what. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I really don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. Your sister basically walked into a minefield and made it way worse. She not only didn't recognize that her future her husband was not a supportive father, but also she was delusional for thinking that these kids who very clearly did not like her would somehow miraculously learn to love her, despite the mounting reasons as to why that's never gonna happen. Not to mention the fact that she said to the kids, "Oh, I'm glad your mom's dead." Like, I don't care who you are, that is such an inappropriate thing to say, and she absolutely should be ashamed of herself. And I know if I had a sibling who said something like that, I would be appalled at their behavior and refuse to support them in that moment, because what she said is inappropriate. And if I was in your shoes, there is no way I would ever support that. Am I the jerk for calling the police on my neighbors after they were singing and yelling at 2 o'clock in the morning? Because now I'm fairly convinced that they found out that I'm the one that called the police on them, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I live in an apartment complex with about 10 to 12 story buildings, and I live on the 3rd floor. 3 days ago, drunk men were really loud outside of my building. They were singing and yelling, and it was almost 2 in the morning. Now, I'm 21 years old, I work full-time, and I study full-time. It's currently exam season, so I was really irritated that they woke me up, and I was also irritated that they weren't shutting up. I could hear many other neighbors asking them to please keep it quiet, but they weren't shutting up, so I just called the police. The police came, and I guess things escalated because they arrested one man. The next day, I could see Facebook posts in the neighborhood group, and surprisingly, the rude and angry comments were directed at a person who had called the police, and that person was me. And I soon found out that it was somebody's birthday. I then saw the following message: "When the dogs are barking and howling all night, you don't seem to be bothered, but you are mad over sounds of fun and happiness. People are so unfair. May God bless you with many loud birthdays." Fast forward, and today, a woman came to my door who was visibly upset as I could see her through the peephole. But I didn't open the door. She somehow figured out who called the police, and I figured she's the wife of the man who got arrested. She was calling me names and saying that I wouldn't be at home forever, and that I'll get my share of fairness, which in my opinion sounds like something sketchy is about to go down. So am I the jerk for calling the police? And should I apologize for calling in the first place? What should I do? No, you're not only not the jerk, but also you should definitely not have to apologize for calling the police. These people were screaming at 2 in the morning at an apartment complex. That is inappropriate, and it's probably against the rules of the complex itself. Like, most places would have some kind of like quiet hours that people have to abide by. So for these people to be like, "Wow, you don't like anything fun," that seriously is such an awful cop-out, and there's really no good excuse for that. When it comes to the lady knocking on your door and basically making these veiled, sketchy remarks towards you, I would not take that lightly in the slightest. And I would even go as far as reporting that to the building manager or even the police. If that really is the wife of the person who got arrested, then they should be mad at their husband and not the person who called the police. You're not the reason this escalated, they are. And if you haven't already, and if you're able to in your apartment complex, I would definitely get one of those doorbells that has a camera on it, because your neighbors sound incredibly crazy, and that is not something that you should have to put up with in the slightest. An entitled Karen demands that I give up my seat in first class, all because she forgot to buy her toddler a ticket on the plane. But when I refused, this lady made such a scene on the airplane that it nearly got her kicked out and banned from the airline. And I'm honestly still blown away by the way she treated me, as well as her sense of entitlement over the situation. Here's what happened. Okay, so this was a couple of years ago, but I just can't get it out of my head. So I thought I'd share it online for all of you to hear. My family lived across the country back then, so I would usually buy a flight to get there. Well, this was during the holidays, so everything was backed up and there was a lot of storms. So when I got to my first layover, my flight was canceled and they couldn't get it in their system to get me a hotel. So I slept on the airport floor that night, just clutching my bags. By the time I got onto the plane, I had spent 24 hours in the airport. But luckily for this flight, I had booked first class. So I get on the plane and I get comfortable, and I'm just so happy that I'll be home soon after the last couple of days that I had just had. But then something absolutely ridiculous happens. A really nice flight attendant comes over to me and points at the empty seat next to me and mine. She then tells me that a mother forgot to book her toddler a ticket, and she was wondering if they could take my seat and the empty seat next to me. I told her that I'm really sorry, but I've had a really long day, and I paid extra for this seat, and I honestly would like to stay. Now, the flight attendant, to their credit, was very nice to me and said no problem. But unfortunately, she let the woman come sit in the empty seat next to me with her toddler in her lap. This woman then immediately looks at me with a scowl and says to me, "I can't believe you wouldn't trade your seat for a kid." I look at her and I simply tell her, "Ma'am, I paid extra for this seat. You should have booked a ticket for him, and that's honestly not my fault." Then she keeps going off, saying things under her breath and to her toddler that I can't even hear. And then to top it off, she tells her kid to make the most noise that he can man and to do whatever he wants. And she keeps saying things to me the entire time, and I honestly can't believe this entitled woman. I finally lash out and I scream, "Will you please shut the F up?" Now, trust me, I'm not very proud of myself for this, but with the last couple of days that I had, I simply didn't care anymore. But eventually, my common sense came back, and I apologized for swearing in front of her kid, even though I heard this lady call me a swear word and many other words. And yet again, for quite a while, this woman would not shut up. But finally, my savior came. The really nice flight attendant came over and bent down to the woman's level and said to her, "Ma'am, you were lucky to be able to switch seats, and all I've heard from you since you switched is you saying awful things to this person and telling your child to be noisy. The plane hasn't even left yet, and we have no problem kicking you off this flight. And if you continue to do this while we're in the air, you will be banned." And I honestly couldn't help but smile that she finally shut up, because this entitled Karen was honestly one of the worst people I've ever had to deal with. Wow, I can't imagine being that irresponsible where you don't even get your toddler a ticket on the plane, but also to act like you're entitled to a first-class seat all because you have a kid with you. But to top it all off, she not only gets the seat in first class, but she then tries to berate the person next to her and be like, "Oh, I can't believe you wouldn't give up your seat for my kid." It's like, what are you talking about? This is not the original poster's fault all because you can't plan properly. Just because you have a kid and you're irresponsible for that kid doesn't mean other people around you have to pick up the slack. Like, that really is unfair and so entitled. Like, maybe if the entitled Karen of this story was a better parent, she would have been able to get a seat for her kid instead of whatever she tried to do with the original poster. And this all literally just comes down to entitlement. She was using her kid to try and guilt trip everybody else around her just so she could get what she wanted. Not to mention that she was trying to steal a first-class ticket. Like, it really could not be more obvious what she was trying to do. So seriously, good for the original poster, and especially to the flight attendant for stepping up and putting this lady in her place, because her behavior was absolutely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for cutting ties with my old best friend after he excessively lied to me, essentially breaking my trust entirely, resulting in us not talking again after almost 3 years? Because right now I feel awful, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So back in 2021, my former best friend and I got into a really huge fight over his deceitful behavior during COVID. So at the time, I had just gotten married and I was finishing up the final capstone project for my degree. He had lost his job due to layoffs and had been caught lying about having a job when he didn't. It also didn't help that he had a lying problem with strangers and would make wild tales just to appear more interesting. When he was confronted to show proof of his employment, he made a huge song and dance out of trying to convince me that all the evidence just wasn't available, almost as if it just magically vanished. Now, he and I were friends for almost 20 years. This was the biggest thing he had ever lied about, and it was pretty serious given the fact that I was lending him money just so he could get by, only to then watch him crash and burn and spend it a few days later. So I confronted him about it, and rather than admit to it at first, he tried digging his heels in deeper and continued to lie. It wasn't until after the cops got involved and that he came back to begrudgingly apologize that he finally admitted to it. And it turns out that he had been lying to me for years and got some kind of rush from it. We ultimately agreed that we shouldn't live together anymore, and I put him in a place where he didn't really have a say, but I was so done with it. So I set my boundary. I kicked him out of the apartment because I couldn't trust him anymore, and we stayed in contact while he took his stuff out of his old bedroom. Now, after everything was done, he sent me some pretty petty last words, trying to make it sound like I didn't care and how I should have been there for him even when it got bad. And I just told him that I'm sorry I wasn't the person he needed me to be, but I was trying to finish school on top of paying for all the bills out of my student checks, and I was also maintaining a side hustle just to make sure we had what we needed. He then told me that he hated that he had to apologize and that he wanted nothing to do with me. So it's safe to say that I felt more betrayed, and even after I showed all that patience, and I just felt like I needed to set the record straight. So I called his family and I talked with them one-on-one about the situation because they're the only people who have known him as long as me. I exposed what he did from my side because he was still lying that we were not talking even when we were, which to me sounds like he was planning to cut me off as soon as I was no longer of use. I felt like I had no more loyalty to him after all the betrayal I had experienced, so this was going to be his karma. And you know what? I felt completely justified. And the thing I hate the most is that I did something terrible and I felt like I was the hand of karma or something like that. It's been almost 3 years as of writing this out, and I teeter back and forth on what was right or wrong. I have a baby on the way, and I'm happy in my marriage. I have a career that I love, and life is good. There's maybe still a part of me that wishes the two of us could be friends again, but so much was burned that I just don't know if we could or if we should reconnect in any way, because this simply could not happen without some major fundamental changes. And on top of that, my trust is broken. He is not the same person I grew up with, and I'm sure he would say the same about me. In many ways, he will always be like a brother to me, but it's also good that we're apart to live separate lives. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You're not the jerk at all, and honestly, the fact that he's like, oh man, it hurts me to have to apologize, that alone is the biggest proof you ever need to show that this guy not only has no remorse, but he also is a complete scumbag. If he really considered you like his best friend, then he would be happy to apologize to try and sort things out. I know that's how I feel with my friends. There are many men and women in my life who I consider really good friends that I would never want to be at odds with. If I offend them in some kind of way, then I would definitely want to apologize. I would never want some lingering tension over something that I might have done. And that goes the other way too. I would hope and probably expect that my friends would apologize to me if they've done something to offend me. Like, that literally is how friendship is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be this one-sided relationship where one person can expect all this stuff and then try to be irrational when things don't go their way. And it really seems like that's the way this guy is acting. He's literally acting like a spoiled brat, and it's all at your expense. And that's honestly just completely unfair considering the fact that you're so busy with so many other things. So for him to be like, man, I hate having to apologize, on top of lying to you all the time, for me kind of shows that he's not really a good friend. This definitely was a one-sided relationship on your end, and I'm so sorry that this is how you have to find out about it. So no, you're not the jerk for cutting him off, but also, I don't think it would be a good idea to welcome this guy back into your life. He's not someone that's gonna be there for you in your time of need, but instead he's only gonna take from you. And honestly, in my opinion, I do not think that you deserve that in the slightest. My fiance is hiding my medication from me and is refusing to allow me to take my medicine, despite the fact that I have so many mounting mental health issues. And I'm now at such a loss that I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My fiance and I have been together for a total of 4 years, and we're getting married this August, and we have a 2.5-year-old son as well. For reference, I am diagnosed with bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, general anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and obesity, and my fiance is diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. My family has extensive history of mental health disorders, and my childhood was traumatic. I've always had issues, but they got worse after having my baby, and I was finally receiving extra care through a postpartum program, so I received medication for the first time. It's an antipsychotic and an antidepressant. I took those for about 1.5 years, and they helped me a lot. Things weren't perfect, but I was much more level-headed and capable of facing life's challenges. Well, around last fall, my fiance decided that he can't stand me being on medication. He never loved the idea, but he really started to hate it then. I gained 30 pounds from the antipsychotic, and that was certainly part of his concern, and I'm now 40 pounds heavier than when we got together. Over the course of many months, he would guilt trip me every single day for being dependent and encourage me to come off my medications. He believes that I'm being manipulated by Big Pharma and being prescribed something that I don't really need. I consulted a psychiatrist, and they did not support me coming off my meds, but helped me do it anyways. I've been off my medications for 1.5 months, and guys, it is not going well at all. My mood swings are incredible. I'm aggressive and mean, I'm violent, I'm having insane manic episodes, I spent literally all of my money, and I'm also having miserably depressive episodes. I also had a 4.19 GPA in school, but this semester I'm failing. My fiance believes that if I have proper sleep, eat half my maintenance calories, and exercise among other healthy habits, then my mental health issues would be resolved. And believe me when I tell you that he puts immense guilt and pressure on me every day to push these things on me. Now, my mom and his mom, as well as my siblings, my friends, my 2 therapists, my family doctor, and myself all believe that I need to be medicated. He says he refuses to marry someone who's on these types of medications and has given me that ultimatum. I had a very scary manic episode last week, and I reached for my antipsychotic medication, and he wrestled it from my hand, spilling it all over the floor. He then picked them up and hid the bottle from me and refuses to tell me where it is. Yes, I know these are red flags, but please remember that he has Asperger's syndrome and that I'm putting him through a lot. He cries every day from the stress of dealing with my mood swings, but he believes it will get better without medication, but I just don't think it will. My question is, how can I possibly navigate this situation? How can I convince him that this medication is not some illegal substance? It's literal medicine to ease the symptoms symptoms of a very real condition? How can I convince him that these intense symptoms are not only withdrawal? And how can I convince him that all those cruxes of health that are so important to him that I achieve cannot be accomplished or even worked on while I'm struggling just to stay sane? What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, no, him having Asperger's syndrome has nothing to do with this. So I think you need to get that part out of your head like right away, because his behavior and the way he's acting is completely insane. This guy's really trying to sit here and be like, oh yeah, you can get over these manic episodes by getting better exercise and getting more sleep. It's like, what are you talking about? Modern medicine is a wonderful thing, and for someone who has all of these issues going on, in my opinion, medication is probably like the best thing they could ever do to try and like fix their life up. Like, why on earth would he take all this medication away from you and be like, no, I don't want to be with someone who's on medication like this. You can get over this. Big Pharma's brainwashing you. Like, dude, you're insane. Does he not see the shift in her attitude and her demeanor after the 1 month of being off this medication? That was all clearly helping her be like a functional member of society, and now this has all been completely derailed because of this weirdo. So if I was in your shoes, in my personal opinion, I would be questioning and rethinking this entire engagement altogether. Like, the fact that he wrestled your medication out of your hands and has now hidden it from you, in my opinion, is all you need to see about how he's gonna be when you guys get married. Because this kind of behavior is absolutely unacceptable, and I truly believe that you deserve somebody way better than this. Am I the jerk for refusing to move my wedding date, all because my competitive stepsister is angry that I'm getting married before her? Because right now I'm exhausted and very frustrated, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my stepsister, who we will call Wendy, has always been competitive with me. It was mostly fueled by her mom, who was always extremely competitive between the families, but it was Wendy who kept it up. I'll admit I fed into it a bit when we were teenagers, but I grew out of it. Meanwhile, she never did. She goes out of her way to try and one-up me, and she thinks everything I do is a one-up towards her, which just isn't the case. And that's honestly the background to the main issue. Wendy is getting married in November, and she's been planning the wedding for over a year. Well, I got engaged a month ago, and my fiance works an extremely high-pressure job, and because of the nature of his job, next year and the year after will be incredibly stressful, and it's part of the reason why he proposed when he did. I don't want to wait 2 years to get married, so I got in touch with our wedding planner, who was able to work something out so that he can get married in August. It will be an extremely small wedding, with a reception dinner of about 20 people over 1 weekend, and this is in contrast to the 150-person traditional wedding that Wendy was planning. Wendy is livid that we're planning to get married before her. She knows the reasons why, but she still insists that I've planned this to upstage her wedding. She is giving her dad no end of garbage for putting money towards my wedding, and in her own words, to help me humiliate her. She is also causing trouble amongst mutual friends that she has with my fiance, but this is not a huge deal because they're not wanting to get involved. But regardless, it was extremely embarrassing because she announced the date of our wedding before we did. My mom and her dad are now hinting that maybe we should move the wedding. They keep saying that maybe a winter wedding, I guess after Wendy's, would be better, and that it would be nice if the family could attend both weddings with everyone on good terms. My stepbrother has also said that while he knows I didn't do it on purpose, because of past issues, this will be extremely hard for Wendy to get past. He also said that I was naive for thinking that just because my wedding is different from hers, that she would somehow just let it go. And you know what? He may be right about that. I still don't really want to change the date of the wedding, and I don't think doing it in the winter will appease Wendy in the slightest. And for me to wait over a year just because of her childish vendetta seems really grossly unfair. But I don't like to be the one to rock the boat, and I do sometimes feel a bit sorry for Wendy. Maybe this isn't the time to take a stand, but right now I seriously don't know if I'm in the wrong. To be completely honest with you, I think Wendy sounds obnoxious, and she clearly has some issues with you that you just don't have with her. So no, you're definitely not the jerk in this scenario, because you're literally just having a wedding at the best time for you and your fiance, and the only person making this into some kind of like competitive situation is Wendy herself. And I bet that Wendy would probably even throw a fit if you did have your wedding after her. She would somehow make this into some big issue of like, oh, you're trying to one-up me by having a wedding after me. Like, she's gonna probably make a big deal out of this no matter what. And in my opinion, I would just not care what this stupid lady has to say about you, because at the end of the day, you know your situation way better than anything she could possibly say. And if this is the only time that you can get married, then by all means get married, regardless of whatever Wendy might have to say. My entitled parents have constantly been trying to control every aspect of my life, demanding that I be perfect, while also criticizing any decision or friends that I ever make along the way. But it all hit a breaking point when they tried to demand that I quit my job so that I could find one that they approve of. But despite the fact that I worked hard to get my career and that I had so many things going right in my life, I decided that enough was enough, and I finally stood up for myself and set some serious boundaries against my entitled parents. And I now have the freedom in my life that I honestly never thought I would ever have. Here's what happened. So for as long as I can remember, my parents have controlled every aspect of my life. They demanded perfect grades, picked my friends, and decided what hobbies I could pursue. Nothing I did was ever good enough for them. If I got a 95% on a test, they would ask why it wasn't a 100. If I made a new friend, they would scrutinize them until they found a reason to disapprove. After I graduated college, I thought things would change. I landed a decent job and I moved into my own apartment, hoping to finally gain some independence. But my parents had other plans. They started showing up unannounced, criticizing my choices, and trying to dictate my career path. They even tried to control who I dated, insisting that no one was ever good enough for their precious child. The breaking point came when I got a promotion at work. I was over the moon, but my parents were not. Instead of congratulating me, they berated me for not consulting them first and told me the new position was a mistake. They insisted that I should quit and find a new job that they approve of. And when they said that, I was devastated and furious. How could they not see how hard I had worked and how much this meant to me? I realized then that nothing would ever change unless I took a stand. So I did something I had never done before. I stood up to them. I told them that I was an adult, capable of making my own decisions, and that their constant interference was no longer welcome. When I said that, they were shocked and angry, accusing me of being ungrateful and disrespectful. But I didn't back down. I told them that if they couldn't respect my boundaries, they were not welcome in my life. It was the hardest conversation I've ever had, but it was also the most liberating. For the first time, I felt like I was in control of my own life. I stopped answering their calls and messages unless they respected my boundaries. It wasn't easy and I felt guilty at times, but I knew it was necessary for my own well-being. Fast forward a few months later, and my life had transformed. I was excelling at my job, I had made new friends who supported me, and I was in a healthy, loving relationship. My parents eventually came around, realizing that they had pushed me too far. They apologized and agreed to respect my boundaries, and our relationship improved significantly. Standing up to my entitled parents was the most challenging thing I've ever done, but it was also the best decision I've ever made. It taught me the importance of self-respect and the power of setting boundaries, and now I'm living a life that I'm proud of, completely free from their constant criticism and from their control. Wow, that's a really good story to hear because honestly, that is really important. For reference, the original poster is a 29-year-old male, and it sounds like they spent their entire life dealing with this behavior, and that is honestly so ridiculous. Like seriously, it doesn't take much to be decent parents and at least support your kids when they're trying to do something fun. That's honestly mind-blowing and just so toxic. Also, the fact that they're like, wait a second, you didn't consult with us first when you got that promotion. You need to quit your job and find something else that we approve of. Like that part alone is insane to me, and there's no way that's ever gonna happen. The original poster worked hard to get where they're at in life, and they're not about to be slowed down by their weird entitled parents. Like they do know that their son is 29 years old, right? I can understand to a certain extent them having some kind of standard for while you're a kid, but you're literally a full-grown adult. You are well beyond your years of living at home with them, and you actively have your own life that you're living. For them to come after you in this way and be like, no, you have to have a job that we approve of. Like that should have been the first sign that they definitely have gone way too far and that they seriously need to pump the brakes, because this entitled demeanor and awful attitude is so unacceptable. And I'm honestly so glad for the original poster that they were able to get out from underneath that and find some kind of happiness in their life. An entitled customer freaks out on me after I tell him that our playground is closed at Burger King. But despite the fact that I clearly put up signs that it's closed due to maintenance, as well as the fact that I just got done using chemicals to clean the area, this entitled customer was not gonna have it, blatantly saying that he's gonna get me fired if I don't do exactly as he says. And I'm honestly still blown away by the way this guy acted, and I really hope I never deal with him ever again. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things off, I work in a Burger King, as it pays slightly better than what I was getting working for my aunt, and I've encountered several Karens before, but this incident was the most recent. Last week, I was doing a deep cleaning of the playground due to a birthday party that had just finished up earlier, and it was my last task to do before clocking out. My boss had asked me to close the playground since I'd be deep cleaning, and she didn't want customers to be in contact with any chemicals that I would be using. While cleaning, I noticed that the AC was out and the playground was extremely hot, to the point where I had difficulty breathing. To add to the issue, I'm also extremely allergic to some of the cleaning products that we use. So I'm basically in an oven with no airflow, and I'm using cleaning chemicals that I can't can't even touch without my skin cracking. I'm struggling to breathe and I'm cleaning, and while I'm doing all of this, I notice this man and his daughter, who looks like she would be at least 4 years old, watching me clean in the main lobby. Now, I didn't think much of it, mainly because I was more worried about getting out of the playground room as quickly as possible. I clean the inside of the playground's tubes and slides and any place that I would fit. I clean the tables and the windows using both a broom and a mop. Throughout this, I have the door to the playground locked. The man and his daughter are sitting outside the playground, clearly waiting for the door to the playground to be open. Eventually, I get out, taking the cleaning tools with me without locking the playground from the lobby side. I didn't have the keys on me, and you would only be able to lock the playground without a key from inside its room. So I drop off the cleaning products in the back, and I tell my boss about the AC being out and to give me the key to lock the playground from the outside. She hands it to me, and I quickly head back to the playground to lock it, worrying that customers might try to get in, despite the signs I put up clearly saying that the playground was closed. Well, sure enough, the daughter was going inside the playground with the man holding the door open. I quickly get to him and ask him to take his daughter out, as the playground was closed due to issues with the AC and the cleaning chemicals all over the playground. Well, when I said that, he gets angry, and while grabbing his daughter, he yells at me and says,
"I waited so long for you to clean up that mess. Why are you still closing the playground if the store is still open?"
I look at him and I say, "Sir, the reason is due to my boss telling me to close it. The playground was just cleaned and the chemicals can't be aired out because the AC is down." The entitled man then looks at me and says,
"Well, when does it open?"
I responded by saying, "Well, I'm not entirely sure. My boss is calling the repair guy right now, so hopefully it'll be open in the morning." When I told him that, I'm guessing he didn't understand what I said, or he was just too angry to fully listen to me. He then said to me,
"Why is the playground only open in the mornings? What kids are gonna be here in the playground if they'd be in school?"
For reference, the day after was Saturday, so I was confused on what he meant by that comment, but I just shrugged him off. I was already too tired and I was in the middle of an allergy attack to say anything to the man, but that made him even more angry. He then started saying,
"This is absolutely insane. I waited 15 minutes to get my order and the cashiers were giving me an attitude, and now you want to close the playground in the middle of the afternoon. I want your boss to fire you."
He then rushes out, pulling his crying daughter behind him, and then he leaves. I thought that was the end of it, and I would finally be able to go home to recover from my allergy attack. But not long after this male Karen left, my boss is on the phone with him. I was grabbing my things from the closet where all the employees put their bags, and I can clearly hear him screaming about how the playground could possibly be closed in the afternoon. My boss is trying to calm him down, and he's saying to him, "Yes, sir, I understand your frustration. However, for the safety of your daughter and our other customers, I asked my employee to close it." The entitled man then says,
"Oh, she gave me an attitude. I waited so long for her to finish cleaning, and now my daughter's crying because she couldn't get in."
My boss responds by saying, "And once again, I do apologize for closing the playground, but there were signs in front saying that the playground was closed for cleaning and the AC is out. Your daughter could have suffered from heat exhaustion." The entitled man then said,
"Okay, but why did the employee tell me that the playground is open only in the mornings? What kids are gonna be there in the morning?"
My boss actually had my back on this one when he said to him, "I did not tell my employee that the playground was only open in the mornings. I will talk with her, but there is probably a chance that maybe there was a misunderstanding. Our repairman is coming in soon to take a look at our AC, so we hopefully should be open by tomorrow. I sincerely apologize for your inconvenience." The entitled man calmed down after that, and after a few more apologies, the call ended. My boss asked me why did I tell the man about the playground being open in the mornings, but when I explained what had happened and what I said, my boss later understood that it was all a misunderstanding. After that, I was free to go home. Now, I haven't seen that male Karen, but I did see the daughter yesterday with an old lady after school let out for the summer, so I'm gonna assume that it was probably her grandma or something like that. She looked pretty happy, even though I feel bad about what happened with her dad. Honestly, I would not feel bad about that at all. It sounds like that guy had a chip on his shoulder and he was upset that his daughter wasn't getting what she wanted. And trust me, I totally get it. They waited outside the playground, they were patient more or less, but clearly reading comprehension skills are not this guy's strong suit, because I'm willing to bet if he just looked up and looked at the sign probably sitting right in front of him, he would have known right then and there that no, he can't be in this room right now. And I don't know about you, but anytime I've used cleaning chemicals in a room, I either have to open a window or just step out of the room entirely. Like, that is not some stuff I want to breathe in, especially cleaning chemicals. Like, that's a really fast way to get hurt. And like, why on earth would the guy be like, "Oh yeah, my kid's gonna play in this playground. Let's put her in a small tube with all these cleaning chemicals still in the air." Like, seriously, what a complete idiot. So honestly, I'm really glad the original poster didn't get fired like this entitled male Karen Karen wanted them to get, because this honestly was such a ridiculous reason to get upset, because you literally were just doing your job, and you did not deserve to get treated like that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my parents that I do not want to take care of my younger siblings while they go away to a funeral in Austria? Because right now, especially at the end of the school year for my university, I feel completely overwhelmed, and I now seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I'm a 19-year-old female, and I have many younger siblings. My parents have 10 children in total, and I'm the oldest. Most of my life, I've had to take responsibility and help them, and sometimes it got unmanageable. I guess you could say I have an oldest daughter syndrome, but overall I love my siblings. And for the older ones, they can take care of themselves for the most part. My parents don't normally leave the country, but lately a relative of my dad's died, and they have to go back to Austria soon to attend a funeral and attend to other things like that. Neither me nor my siblings knew them very well, so we are not attending, plus the cost of travel is just way too high. Well, things came to conflict when my parents told me that my closest brother, who's 16 years old, as well as myself, will be taking care of my siblings alone, and we're going to be taking care of all of them. And you know what? We suggested anything. We said to them that maybe they could hire someone, or even bring in a friend of the family or something, but they just turned it down. They are solitary in their decision, and I just don't like the idea. I told my parents that I was in university, and my brother was in high school, and we have large amounts of responsibilities that we need to meet right now, especially with it being the end of the school year. I was quite stern when I told them this, which may have been very rude of me. I was very staunch in the fact that I would not be taking care of them because it would cause an unnecessary strain on me that I was unprepared for. While it's not absolutely impossible, and I know that I will be doing the majority of the work since I am the oldest, while also having my own things like university, by the end of the week when my parents finally come back, I will probably be completely burnt out and exhausted. We have no relatives in this country or any other family members, and we are hesitant to bring friends into the house, so I really just don't know what to say. I feel like I'm overreacting and perhaps being selfish for not wanting to take care of my siblings, especially since it's an emergency and just for a week. So am I the jerk in this scenario? What should I do? I do not think you're the jerk at all, because what they're asking, in my opinion, is completely ridiculous. They seriously want you to watch all 9 of your siblings while also trying to keep up with your work at university? Like seriously, that just doesn't seem feasible. Especially at the end of the school year. Like, don't you have like finals you have going on like right now? And don't get me wrong, I totally understand that the death in the family was not planned, but like seriously, give her some kind of support of some kind. Bring in a family friend just to be there just in case, instead of being so stubborn about it and being like, no, it's you and your brother. You two are the only ones to watch the kids, nobody else. Like, I don't know about you, but having somebody on standby just to help out maybe in the evenings with getting kids ready for bed, or even like in the morning or something like that, like in my opinion, that's completely reasonable and that's not like an unusual request. So no, in my opinion, I don't think the original poster's the jerk here. I think the parents are not thinking this through, and the fact that they're leaving you with all these kids right at the end of the school year, in my opinion, is completely unfair. I finally left my toxic mother's house after enduring years of awful treatment from her and her boyfriend. Here's what happened. Okay, so I cut off my toxic mother, and this is what she did to me. For some backstory here, my parents had shared custody of me a couple of months ago, and I had just gotten back from visiting my grandparents in my hometown. At that point, both my father and my stepmother sat me down to have a talk. They said that social services were becoming more concerned over me and my siblings' well-being at my biological mother's home, especially with her just being charged. So they asked me, since I had already been thinking about leaving, if I wanted to leave at the end of the next week that I would be at her home. I said yes, but it was still a very hard decision for me to make. Not because of my mom, but because of my younger half siblings that also lived with her. The time I had spent living in her home had created so many awful memories for me. Her boyfriend would be verbally and emotionally awful towards me, as well as blame anything that went wrong on me specifically. In fact, I once asked him why he hated me so much, and he said to me, because you look like your father. But the thing is, my father had nothing to do with him. My biological mother and him would also have fights all the time. I would have to try and take my siblings out of the room so that they wouldn't hear it. They have been together since I was 5 years old, and I'm now currently 15 years old, and I believe they are still together. I left that week because I was reaching my breaking point. I hated going there. The week that I planned to leave on, I decided to write her a letter telling her why I had left. To be honest though, I wasn't expecting that great of a response, because in the past when I would try to tell her how I was feeling about anything, she would instead just brush it to the side. She would get mad at me too for saying how I was feeling and would make anything I say all about her. So with that bit of context out of the way, here's the letter that I left for her. Dear Mother, I have decided to write this letter to you as a type of farewell, at least for now. I'm going to be living at Father's house full time from now on, and by the time you read this letter, I will have already left your home. I know hearing this will probably upset you, and I'm sorry for doing so, but this is all for the best. I don't really know how to put all my feelings into words for you, and I have always had trouble with that. I just want you to know that the reason I myself am leaving is because I don't think you're a bad person, Mother, but I do think that before I can come and start visiting you again, you need to get help. By how things were going, this decision was not just up to me at this point in time. Also, please don't blame my stepmom and my father too much. They honestly just want what's best for me and my mental health. To be honest, I have many more things I would like to tell you, but I gave up on that idea a while ago. Every time I would try to share my feelings with you, you would never really listen and sometimes even become angry at me. That's why, if you notice, I've become more distant towards you. Furthermore, all the lying, saying hurtful things about me, and the excuses. And I've now just started to not trust you. I really wanted to believe that it would never have to come to this again, but Mother, you were the one that decided it. I hope to be able to see you again once you have gotten the things you need, and when I'm ready as well. I'll always love you and wish the best for you, even if you don't believe so. Farewell, Mother, and hopefully we'll be able to meet again someday. Now, I tried to express all these feelings to her and see if she would maybe understand why I decided to leave, but she just responded to me with all these messages. She said to me, "Amazing. I just do not know how you could give up on a parent. I never could do that, and I had some messed up parents. My mother had a mental illness my entire life, and I would never do to her what you just did to me. My dad is such a jerk, but I still could never do that to him either. I love you, but I will never understand your cruel nature. You never got that from me." Then the next day, she sent me the following. "If you want to stay at your father's place permanently, that is your choice. It sucks for me as I do love you. I have moved for you and everything else, but it just seems I'm never good enough." Furthermore, since my father still had to be in contact with her for certain things, I asked him to ask my mom if they could somehow plan for me to see my siblings, and this is what she said about it. "You will need to come and talk to me before I agree to anything." And after this message, it was just the same BS over and over again, or saying how she didn't trust me to see my siblings. I mean, it's not like I pretty much raised them myself anyways, right? I haven't heard or seen my siblings in 3 months, and it's really affecting me badly. But today, I was told I was going to be able to see them next Friday, and I'm so excited and happy. But the only thing is that there is a catch. My biological mother has to be there. But thankfully, my father and stepmother and a social worker is also going to be there. And I just hope that she somehow doesn't ruin my visit with my siblings. Yeah, it sounds like your biological mom is not a good person, and she was clearly trying to guilt trip you. Here you are trying to leave and find a better life, and she's trying to guilt trip you and be like, "Why could you do this to me?" While conveniently enough, never addressing the things that she let happen to you. Like seriously, it's just classic gaslighting, and I'm so sorry that you dealt with that. So hopefully things go well for you in the future, and you're able to have a better life with your dad and your stepmom. I overheard my fiance and my future mother-in-law bad-mouthing my mom, saying horrible things about her behind our backs, as well as degrading her as a person, despite the fact that she is always very sweet to my fiance and her family. And now, after I approached my fiance about it, she got extremely upset and said that I was in the wrong for overhearing their conversation, while also refusing to acknowledge or even apologize for the hurtful things that she said. And I now feel like I'm at a crossroads and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 28-year-old male, and I overheard my 27-year-old fiance, along with my future mother-in-law, bad-mouthing my mom. And as a result, I've been contemplating ending things with my fiance. My fiance's brother is getting married in a few months, and this wedding is happening in the state where my fiance and her family are located, which is very close to where they live. So me and my family would be flying out for the wedding, which is a minimum of a 5-hour flight. This wedding is a multi-day event with a different theme for clothing each day. This would mean that my parents and I will have to check in one bag to ensure that we can take all of our clothing. My family and I have had really bad experiences with airlines in the past where we have lost our carry-on luggage. I already discussed this beforehand with my fiance and asked if it would be okay for my family to leave a check-in size suitcase of clothing for the wedding a month or so beforehand, to which she said she agreed. Now, a couple of days ago, my mom chatted with my future mother-in-law. Then, yesterday, I overheard my fiance and her mother chatting over the phone. She was talking loudly in another room where I could mostly make out everything they were saying. And just so we're on the same page, I completely understand the severity of my actions when it comes to listening to their private conversation. However, I heard them bad-mouthing my family for wanting to leave a suitcase of clothing and how it's just another thing that they have to take care of now and how my family doesn't see it that way. They were venting alternatives for us getting our clothes to their wedding, which was basically them saying that we needed to check in a bag, which I clearly articulated we had a bad experience with in the past. I also overheard my fiance saying how she can't believe her mom was able to get through a conversation with my mom. Additionally, my fiance said how her mom only had to deal with this for a couple of hours, but my fiance will have to deal with this for the rest of her life. How my mom is weak and she just can't deal with weak people. I even overheard my future mother-in-law asking my fiance if I'm anything like my mom in these ways, to which my fiance did defend me. Nevertheless, hearing them talk poorly about my mom, who has been nothing but sweet to them, was absolutely heartbreaking. I was mortified by their conversation and I felt blindsided. I never expected my future mother-in-law to say these things about my mother, but even more so, I didn't expect my own fiance to be saying these things. I feel like my fiance and my future mother-in-law crossed a line here, which I don't know can be repaired. I feel as though they not only disrespected my mother, but also me and my family, and I feel as though they don't accept all parts of me and my family. I love my mother to bits, and she has been nothing but sweet and kind towards my fiance along with her family, so I don't know how these negative feelings towards my mom festered on their end. I don't know if I'm overreacting here. When I brought up the things I heard from my fiance, she got extremely upset at me for overhearing and violating her private space, which is completely understandable. She refused to acknowledge or apologize about any of the hurtful things that were said, which I can also partly understand as it was my fault for overhearing. I just don't know what to do anymore. I feel like I may be the one overreacting now and I'm just not sure how to get over it. What should I do? This is so inappropriate it's not even funny, because it sounds like your fiance is spinning this towards you, all because you overheard their conversation. And sure, maybe that's a violation of privacy, but seriously, why can she not apologize for saying those awful things about your mom? She's not only refusing to apologize for it, but she's also refusing to acknowledge it. Like, that, in my opinion, is the real problem here, and not the fact that you overheard them talking crap about your mom. If that was my mom they were talking about, I would have a lot to say to them, because there's no way I would ever talk about her mom like that. Like, they literally tried to turn this around and make you the bad guy, and that is insane to me. You are not the bad guy here, and if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would let that happen, because what they said about your mother completely overrides anything that you might have done when it comes to like overhearing and eavesdropping, and I believe that you absolutely are owed an apology as well as an explanation for the things that she said. Am I the jerk for not inviting my birth family to my wedding, even when my sister offered to pay for them to be there? Because right now this is all getting very frustrating, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I was placed for adoption at birth. My older biological sister was placed when she was 5 months old, and together we are about 3 years apart in age, and we were adopted by the same parents and raised in the same family. I also have other siblings I grew up with who have no biological connection to me. My sister tried to rope me into a birth family search, but I told her I didn't want to find them and offered her my support from the outside, but that's as much as I was willing to give. Well, she found them 5 years ago and has been in regular contact with them ever since. Our family supported this, and my parents have met my birth parents in an effort to support my sister, but I still choose not to meet them or have them in my life. My sisters have passed letters to me from them and has been trying for years to get me to agree to meet with them and build some kind of relationship. They keep saying how much it hurts them that I want nothing to do with them. She passes this on to me and tells me how much it hurts her that I won't be a part of this with her because our connection as blood-related siblings is huge, and now we have more blood-related family. I told her there's no part of me that wants to meet them, and there's nothing that I want from them. She told me that she knows I have to want answers, and I said no. I already know the answers. They were young when they had us, and they didn't want to be parents at the time. She asked how I knew that, and I told her that I did listen to her after she met them for the first time. It has honestly been so messy. I get letters from them about once a month, and I try giving them back, but to no avail, so I dispose of them and have never read them. I'm not interested, and I just can't be more clear than that. Fast forward, and I'm now getting married, and my sister fought for them to be invited. She offered to pay for them to come and told me that she would cover all the costs associated with their place on the guest list, and I still said no. She called me crying after she had been at their house because they were so upset to be missing it. She said to me, "Our biological dad wants to walk you down the aisle," and I told her that's not gonna happen, and that them being upset that wasn't a strong motivator for me. I also warned her that the place we're getting married at has security, and we are already adding them to our package, and I can easily pass on information about our birth family just to keep them out if she really wants to try sneaking them in. My sister said that I'm being unreasonable. My parents assured me they support me either way, but want me to know I don't need to take my stance for their sakes, and that they would be fine with them coming along as well. Well, my sister said if mom and dad don't care, then I should want my whole family at my wedding, and I told her they will be there, since I don't consider our birth family my real family. Her reaction was even stronger when the invites were sent out, and our birth family didn't get any. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now this is so frustrating and I just don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because your biological family absolutely abandoned you at birth. I totally get that they put you up for adoption because they weren't ready to have kids, but at the end of the day, that doesn't mean you have any obligation towards these people. Like, you've made your stance very clear. You've said straight up that you don't want them in your life and you don't want anything to do with them. And in my opinion, that is all the reasoning your sister should ever get, because the way she's acting is really obnoxious, and I don't blame you for cutting them out in the slightest. An insane, crazy colleague of mine is 100% convinced that allergies are not real, claiming that it only comes from people who are fussy eaters, and that anyone who claims to have a food allergy is only lying to look for attention. Things got so bad with this colleague that she would purposefully slip allergens into people's food without their knowledge, just so she can prove that allergies are not real. Here's what happened. In an office that I used to work in, I had a colleague who didn't believe that food allergies were real. As far as she was concerned, allergies were just excuses made up by fussy eaters. And for the sake of the story, we'll call this woman Sally. No matter what anyone said or what evidence was presented, she refused to believe that allergies of any kind were real. And she would like to prove this by purposefully slipping allergens into people's food without their knowledge. And Sally was proud of how many people she had called out by doing this. Nobody liked her, and nobody would take any food or drink that she made or even touched, even those of us without any allergies, which she absolutely just hated. And worst of all, she couldn't even understand why nobody trusted her. In fact, one time she tried to get the entire team in trouble with HR after everybody refused to eat any of the food that she had baked. Fast forward, and one day Sally stormed into the office and she was furious. It turned out that over the weekend at a family barbecue, she had tried to call out her sister-in-law by slipping peanuts into her food, but her sister-in-law was very allergic to peanuts. After eating the food Sally had poisoned, her sister-in-law went into severe anaphylaxis and had to be rushed to the hospital. She ranted and raved about the injustice of it all. She could not seem to understand why her family, and her brother especially, were all so incredibly angry with her. She refused to acknowledge that she had done anything wrong. In fact, as far as she was concerned, she was the real victim in this story. Sally tried to say that her sister-in-law was just trying to make her look bad and turn her family against her. So according to her, she went into life-threatening anaphylaxis to make her look bad. Then she insisted that no, her anaphylaxis must have been caused by something else, maybe food poisoning perhaps, or something that she had done earlier that day. It had nothing to do with slipping her a known allergen into her food, because remember, allergies are apparently not real. The scariest part was that at no point did Sally express any remorse or even concern for her sister-in-law's well-being, not even when she mentioned that her sister-in-law had almost passed away. Now, the next day and the following day, she didn't come to work, and a rumor spread through the office that Sally had been arrested. I don't know if that was true or not, as nothing was ever really confirmed, and management was super tight-lipped about anything to do with her. And as you can imagine, Sally did not have many friends in the office, and none of us were acquainted with her family, so none of us had the means to confirm literally anything. This was in the days before social media, so we had no way of finding out anything. A meeting was later called, where our manager told us that Sally would not be coming to work anytime soon, and that if anyone called asking about her, we were to forward them immediately to whichever manager was on duty, and to say nothing about Sally. Bob, one of my other coworkers, would look for news stories about her when he went for his morning paper, but he never saw anything. And for as long as I worked there, Sally never came back to work. And you know what? I have no idea what happened to her. But also, she wasn't exactly missed by anybody in the office, and I really hope her sister-in-law is okay. Years later, I tried to look Sally up on social media, but she has a super common first and last name, so lots of profiles came up, but unfortunately none of them looked like her in the slightest. But regardless of what happened to Sally, I was truly happy that she never came back, because she literally was the worst person I ever had to deal with while I worked at the office. Okay, I'm gonna say a tongue twister real quick, but Sally sounds like an absolute psychopath. Say that 10 times fast. Seriously, who in their right mind would sit there and be like, ooh, allergies aren't real and I'm gonna prove it? And then she turns around and starts poisoning people's food just to try and prove some point that literally has no footing. Like, what are you talking about? Allergies are absolutely real, especially a peanut allergy. Like, that is so dangerous. And I only say that from experience because I have several family members who are allergic to peanuts, and they literally have to carry around an EpiPen just to make sure they don't expire right there on the spot if they eat something bad. And you know what? I'm willing to bet that Sally went to jail for this because what she did to her sister-in-law is entirely malicious and intentional. There really is no good excuse for this. She knew that her sister-in-law was allergic to peanuts, and instead of just being like, oh, okay, let's not give her peanuts, she wanted to try and call her out and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna prove that you're faking it. But then here we go, she's going into anaphylaxis, her throat's closing up, and she literally can't breathe. Like, why would you even begin to play with that? If someone goes to me and says, hey, I'm really allergic to peanuts, I'm not going to assume they're a liar and then poison them. I'm gonna be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna keep all these peanuts away from you at all times. So yeah, Sally absolutely deserved to go to jail, and I really hope that is the final result of her story, even though we don't know the final outcome of what happened to her, because her actions could have taken out her sister-in-law permanently, and there's no good excuse for her behavior in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not giving my deadbeat father any of the inheritance money left to me by my grandfather? Because right now he is practically begging for this money, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my father in his late 50s left my mom when I was 3 years old, and this is also when my sister was just a newborn baby. Mom had many mental health problems after this, and we were instead raised by my grandfather and my grandma until she passed away when I was 7. Grandpa passed away last year, and I took over as legal guardian for my sister. Grandpa had nothing to do with my deadbeat father, although he was aware the deadbeat had married and fathered other children in the last 5 years, but it changed nothing for him because he did not look too kindly on a man who would abandon 2 children the way my father did. He literally left the country to evade child support and refused contact with his family for years. He also emptied out all of the money he and my mom had before he left us, so he left us with literally nothing. When Grandpa drew up his will, he looked into how he could leave my father with nothing, but that wasn't an option. However, he didn't need to leave him with more than a single dollar, and so that's what he did. And the portion that would have been my father's was divided between me and my sister, with him also leaving the house to my sister and I. My estranged father attempted to fight the will and get the share my sister and I own, but he was denied because my grandfather did everything above board. My father's siblings ended up back in contact with him after Grandpa died, and while they're not close like before, they have a relationship that my sister and I have no interest in being part of. So this is where the moral question comes into play. My father has a child who has a life-limiting medical condition. He and his wife are struggling to keep their heads above water with 4 young kids and not having a lot of money. He feels that I should give him my share of the inheritance for the sake of his kids, believing Grandpa was wrong not to think of them at all in his will, as he left nothing to my deadbeat's other children. I told him he wasn't getting anything from me, and then my father's siblings got involved, and they feel that I should give him my share, and that having the house and my sister having the money should be good enough, but I could do it as an act of kindness for other siblings I refuse to meet or even get to know. I have been under some intense pressure over this, and it's all driven by the illness and condition that one of his children has. I know that's the only reason my aunts and uncles are so bothered by it all. So honestly, am I the jerk in this scenario? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. It is so ironic to me that the aunts and uncles are coming to you being like, come on, give your dad the money. Meanwhile, they said they're doing literally, as far as we know, nothing to help out this kid. Like seriously, put your money where your mouth is. If this kid really has a life-threatening illness, why not put your own money on the line and say, okay, I'm gonna help you out? Or even try and pick up the slack that the deadbeat father has clearly left out in the open. Like this guy's not gonna use any of that money on his kid. He just wants the money from his kid. You know, the kid that he walked out on. He has no other vested interest, in my opinion, towards the original poster. And in my opinion, I'm almost convinced that he would stop communication as soon as that check clears. So I know if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would ever give any kind of money to that guy, because I personally would not trust him, because this guy has an obvious track record of betraying your trust. And in my opinion, I just wouldn't want to get burned ever again. Am I the jerk for telling my brother not to blame our family or his wife's family for their regret with how they raised their kids? Because right now, they're claiming there's a hurtful divide in the family, despite the fact that they're the ones that caused it. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my brother and his wife got married about 6 years ago. They were 2 single parents who wanted to be married to each other, but the kids were not as into the idea as the adults. so they decided to live as a married couple with two separate families. My brother's kids were parented by my brother and my brother only, and his wife's kids were parented by his wife and only his wife. His kids interacted with our family, and her kids interacted with hers, with the kids only interacting with their biological siblings. They were not a blended family or even a family unit. It was very much two family units centered around a married couple. It was weird to members on both sides of their families, but it just was exactly what it was. Now, I always saw a time where they would regret it, especially if they ever wanted to change how things worked and the kids were against it, or where no love is developed for step relatives and we have no ongoing relationships with any of them. But I also knew it wasn't my place to interfere. Well, the day has come and regret has already sunk in. My brother's oldest graduated from high school a couple of weeks ago, and my parents told them that they had saved for each grandkid's future, and they now had access to money to pay for college or to get them started if they wanted to get like an apprenticeship or something like that. Now, of course, my brother's oldest was excited, but my brother and his wife not so much, because the money saved will be for each biological grandkid, but not for the wife's kids, and they do not have the same help and support from their biological grandparents. My brother and his wife told my parents that they can't give to some and not to all, but they said the stepkids are not part of our family and they're not their grandkids, and therefore they do not owe them any money. My brother attempted to talk to his kids about the money, and they said they don't care about his wife's kids or if they struggle or not, so they're just not going to worry about them. My brother and his wife are now pissed off with both of their families for the very clear and very hurtful divide in their family, but I told my brother that he has no business blaming us for the regret that he and his wife feel, especially when they're the ones that made the decisions that they did, and they now have the outcome that was honestly always inevitable. I told him that the kids all seem happy, so they should just get over it, and when I said that, he was very mad with me. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. No, you didn't do anything wrong. This is literally your brother and his wife completely regretting all of their decisions. Like seriously, all of this falls on their back. You guys didn't do anything. They literally ostracized both sides of the family from each other, and then they're gonna sit there and be like, wow, there's a clear and very hurtful divide in the family, but there's only a divide because you guys caused that. Like seriously, why should the grandparents pay for kids that they just don't even know? That just doesn't make any sense, and there's just no reason for them to be obligated to do anything like that. So seriously, if there's any problems in that family, it falls on your brother and his wife, because you and the rest of the family did nothing wrong. Am I the jerk for not agreeing to walk my dad's fiance down the aisle? Because this lady has been aggressively asking me over and over again, and I'm now at my breaking point, and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My dad is getting married in September, and a few months ago, his fiance asked me if I would walk her down the aisle. She's not close to her own family, and she has no kids of her own. My dad has me, and I'm 17 years old, and my two sisters who are 20 and 15 years old. Our mom passed away 8 years ago, so it was just us and dad before his fiance came into his life, and then ours. Now, I don't really like his fiance. I accepted that my dad does, but she comes across as kind of pushy to me and a little too possessive. She had this weird moment when my older sister moved all her stuff out of our house a few months ago, and she did that so she could take it to her own place. And this weird moment was over my sister asking my dad for photos of him and his mom's wedding, since my sister was asking if there were any spare copies around. But my dad's fiance was just upset that they were still in the house, and the fact that my sister wanted to take some. My younger sister and I got upset when all photos of our mom were taken down in the living room and in the dining room. My dad's fiance was upset about our reaction and said that we should want this to be comfortable for her. She doesn't like us calling her by her first name and tried to influence us into calling her Mammy. Now, we both knew that was another word for mom, so we just said no. But she said, oh, but it's not mom though. This can be a special thing for us that you can call me. Fast forward, and my older sister had a small surgery, and she asked dad if he would be able to come and stay with her and drive her back to her place, and dad said that he could try, and he would let her know if he couldn't do it. Well, his fiance told him that she'd do it if he couldn't, and my younger sister heard them talk about it, so she warned my older sister. So my older sister called back and said that if he couldn't, she would ask our grandma. Grandma ended up going with her, and dad's fiance got upset that she didn't want her there. Mother's Day was also awkward last year because she expected us to celebrate her. This year was doubly so because the expectation was still there. Now, I have talked to my dad about it, and I have told her as well, but nothing really changed, and she just got upset all over again. So when it comes to the point of this post, I said no to walking her down the aisle, and I continued saying no, and she just continues asking me. It's sort of the final few months, and she told me how much she wants me to do it because it shows me embracing her into the family and makes her feel supported by not just dad, but the other male in the family. But I told her I didn't want to do it. It's a big source of tension now. My sisters are on my side, and my dad has tried to compromise with her by them walking together, but it hasn't changed things. So honestly, am I the jerk for not wanting to walk her down the aisle? Because right now I'm really frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. No, you are not the jerk by saying no to this lady, and the fact that she keeps asking you over and over again, almost like desperately at this point, in my opinion, is really weird and inappropriate. Your first answer should have been more than enough for this lady. She should have taken no for an answer right then and there, and that honestly should have been the end of it. And in my opinion, it is incredibly inappropriate for her to be pushing this hard for it. And here's the thing, she set herself up for failure years back by being so aggressive about everything. Like, she took down photos of your mom around the house and was like, oh wow, I can't believe her pictures are up. Like, seriously, that's so inappropriate and just uncalled for. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think the way she's acting is really weird, and if I was in your shoes, I would definitely be saying no as well. Am I the jerk for telling my brother's girlfriend that she isn't family after she insisted on going to my cousin's funeral? Here's what happened. I'm a 37-year-old female and I have 2 children that live in my house with me. I am a single mother and I'm juggling a job at the same time. My 2 daughters are 13 and 10 years old. My brother has told me that he's had trouble finding a house and getting money since he recently got a small job, but it just doesn't pay as much. And he asked me if he could stay in my house for the time being, and I agreed. I let my brother settle into one of our rooms that we don't use, and along with him, I see his pregnant girlfriend walking into my house as well. Now, I am stunned since my brother hadn't told me that he had a girlfriend at all, or even just tell me that she was pregnant. Even though it was strange for me, I allowed them to stay in my house. A few weeks pass by and his girlfriend starts to get rude towards me, and even my children tell me that they don't enjoy having her in the house. I told my children I would take care of it and had a talk with my brother when his girlfriend wasn't present, and he told me that she was probably having mood swings and said that I just needed to give her a break. So for some time I did exactly that. Fast forward, and me and my children were getting prepared to go to my cousin's funeral, which my brother was not attending because he had work that day and he couldn't get the day off, but he said he would still send flowers to pay his respects. Now, I was fine with the idea. My kids were in the car and I went back inside to get my keys since I had left them on the counter. But right then and there, my brother's girlfriend stopped me and asked where I was going. So I responded by saying I'm going to my cousin's funeral. Well, she then got upset and told me that she should have been invited. And when she said that, it just completely threw me off. And I told her that she wasn't family, so there was no reason that she should have been invited. In fact, she didn't even know my cousin personally. She broke down in tears and I had absolutely no time for her. So I got my keys and attended the funeral with my children. Once we got back, it was late. So I had my kids bathe and go to sleep. And once I was heading to my room, my brother stopped me and tried to get me to admit that I was being rude to his girlfriend, but I just immediately shut him down. I told him that if his girlfriend was going to continue to act like she owns my house, then she wasn't going to live here anymore. So honestly, am I at fault in this situation? Because right now I am very frustrated with my brother's girlfriend and I am just about at my breaking point. No, this is a really weird situation and I just don't think you did anything wrong. For starters, I'm really surprised that you let your brother still move into your house, especially since he lied to you and snuck his girlfriend into your house. Like, I don't know about you, but that would really upset me. But also, the girlfriend's a complete jerk. She's treating you as well as your kids like garbage. She's making these weird demands all the time, and it doesn't sound like she's pulling her weight around the house at all. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for telling her, sorry, you can't go, you're not family. Because she literally is just that. She's not family, and there really is no reason for her to be showing up to that in the first place. And honestly, if your brother doesn't like the fact that his girlfriend is being rude, then he needs to step in and do something about it. Because I can imagine that her behavior is really starting to add some tension into the house. And if that was my place, I would absolutely not want to deal with that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for deleting my vlogger friend's footage without her permission after she did a house tour of my house without my permission? Because right now she is very upset, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I invited my friends over for a housewarming to celebrate me moving into my dream home. It's a place I've been saving and working super hard for, which is something that all of my friends are aware of, and everyone was happy to come over and celebrate the milestone. The issue is that one of my friends, who we will call Susie, is a very popular vlogger. She asked if she could film part of the party and include it in her day in the life video. Now, I'm super private, so at first I said no, but Susie promised that she wouldn't show anything personal and only wanted a couple of scenes of my friends laughing together and footage of the food spread. She also promised that I wouldn't be in the video. Now, I was still uncomfortable, but after she assured me that she wouldn't overshare, I said fine. The day of, within 10 minutes of the party starting, a mutual friend pulled me aside and said that she saw Susie filming her intro and mentioned that she was going to give a house tour of her friend's new home. She also said that she saw Susie filming the outside of my house from top to bottom, and it would be easy to tell the neighborhood that I lived in. During the entirety of the party, I noticed that Susie kept filming more than what she promised, so I confronted her about it. I asked to see the footage, and Susie said no, and acted super offended that I wouldn't trust her. I waited towards the end of the party, and when Susie was in the bathroom before leaving, I decided to just go through her camera. I was furious when I noticed that she filmed my entire house, even my bedroom and my closet, and there were tons of clips where you could clearly see my face. I am not kidding when I say that the footage looked like one of those house tour videos that realtors post online. Now, I can admit that I was acting on impulse and my anger at this moment, but I went ahead and just deleted all the footage of the party. Well, she found out shortly after when she went to shoot footage of everybody leaving, and then she confronted me. I did admit to doing it, and we had a bit of a row until I just kicked her out. Most of my friends are understanding and they are on my side, but they did say that I shouldn't have gone and deleted the footage myself. I personally felt like I did the nice way of asking Susie directly first, but she was being so obstinate that I had no choice. The drama's been spreading now with mixed reactions, so I wanted another opinion in case I really was the jerk. What should I do? No, I don't really think you're the jerk, and I can agree with you that maybe you shouldn't have deleted the footage, but I honestly don't blame you for doing it in the first place. Because let's be honest, Susie was completely ignoring all of your boundaries. She basically said, oh yeah, I'm not gonna film anything that would give away your house, but then she turns around and says, oh yeah, let's give a house tour, while also showing outside shots of your house. That's insane to me, and that is incredibly inappropriate. If I was in the original poster shoes, I would also be upset. And the worst part about this is that Susie absolutely knew what she was doing. She knew that you didn't want your house filmed, but she went ahead and did it anyways. And sure, she probably could have edited things down to some degree, but at that point, the trust is already completely ruined. I would not trust her with anything that she filmed, even if she did say, oh yeah, I'm gonna edit you out. Because when you agreed to have her in your house filming your party, you agreed to very specific footage and very specific shots. Not an entire house tour, come on, that is so over the line. So no, I don't think you're the jerk, because Susie, in my opinion, absolutely crossed the line. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.